And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, we're talking about the demilitarization of the NYPD, something that we've seen throughout the entire country right now in various cities, especially blue cities in America right now when it comes to policing. But now we're seeing a centric focus with the NYPD when it comes to demilitarization. So what is that, right? What is that? That's scaling back from equipment, scaling back from appearance, a military style presence with certain things. You have to ask yourself, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Now, the NYPD, like other police departments, is a paramilitary organization, especially the NYPD, right? Follows Army regulations. You learn something. You learn that in the police academy. Whether you were military or not, you learn that the police academy, the NYPD itself, is supposed to be on parallel with Army regulations. And I always say that when you're working as a police officer, especially in New York City metropolis, that you're pretty much in battle. You're at battle every day on the street. You have a target on your back, and you have to be prepared, and you have to be ready. It's not always garrison, right? And it seems that city council and anti-police rhetoric, they want you to always be in garrison. What does that mean? That means in dress, and you're not in that warrior-type status. You're not prepared for battle. And when you're on the street, you are in battle. There's no doubt about it. So let's do it. Let's talk about it. John Marlin, good morning. Friday Roundtable. Here you go. Finest unfiltered.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Welcome. Happy Friday. You know, I think the one thing for me is like we've been hearing this term for like the last 10 years, the demilitarization of police. And I'm like, I kind of don't understand it, you know, because and I'll tell you why I don't understand it. Like the basic founding of the NYPD, like when the NYPD first formed as the Metropolitan Police Department, their founding was based upon the fact is they were going to be like a quasi-military structure. And the reason was because they wanted something that publicly presented as an authority, as an authority out there, not just to fight crime, but a lot of what was happening in the early days of New York City was rioting, protesting from labor workers, protesting from the mass immigration that was coming in, both legal and illegal, that was coming into New York City. So it was like a really growing city at the time. And what they realized is like just having these loosely based police around different precincts that really weren't in this uniformed rank structure, that they weren't able to contain these riots. When they kicked off, sometimes they would last for days. Sometimes, you know, the city would burn down. You know, and they were like, we can't have that. We need something that could quell periods of civil unrest, that could stop protests from turning illegal. And I think what we've witnessed the last 100 years is a very effective police force at multiple facets of law enforcement. And part of the law enforcement's mission, you know, is policing First Amendment activities that have the potential for violence, have the potential for domestic terrorism, have the potential for foreign terrorism. And the reason is like when you think of anything where there's a lot of people, whether it be a church gathering, a sporting event, a protest, a parade, a period of civil unrest, those are what's called soft targets. So at this time when we're seeing really a rise in protests, right? And where do we see that the most? We see that the most in big cities, right? New York City is having an unprecedented level of protest and First Amendment activities that are really turning a lot of times they're turning into chaos, and they're turning illegal. And what's happening, we just went down on LinkedIn. I don't know why, but whatever. So at this moment in time, why would we seek to pull this back? Like, what's the issue here? And that's my question. It's like, why do we want to get rid of SRG at the moment? Why do we want to demilitarize the NYPD at the moment? What is the public concerned with? And I really think the public's more concerned with, in this last 3 years, the NYPD's inability to really control these protests from turning illegal. And the same thing across the country. I think they're more concerned with that, the public, than what the politicians are pushing, saying that we need to demilitarize. So we'll go into a city council bill. We're obviously going to touch on the SRG. We're going to touch on a lot of other things that are happening. But I mean, I think that's the stuff that really sits with me. I'm like, why right now? What happened that we have to demilitarize? Are they being used improperly, the police? And I think if you look overwhelmingly, the majority of citizens will say that the police are being used improperly only because they're politicized and they're being told to stand down when there are literal anarchists taking over cities and streets and shutting down critical infrastructure. I think they're more concerned with that than they're concerned with if the police look like they're militarized or not.
Yeah. Morning, guys. Morning, chat. Happy Friday. We got a lot to talk about this, and the question is, what does demilitarizing the police actually mean? Because what's their actual motivation behind it? Because interestingly enough, like the people who call for that are not the people who are the people who aren't talking about the actual issues that are going on with policing, in terms of in terms of integrating surveillance technology. They're not touching that, but they'll tell you demilitarize the police. So what's your actual goal? And especially in light of what we see going on in like other parts of this country with these protests getting out of hand. It's pretty interesting that now is the time they choose to do that. So we got, like I said, we have a lot to talk about this, and as we get through it, I'll my whole stance on this is that this is another BS talking point by leftists, who don't really understand what exactly they mean by demilitarize the police. Okay, they don't really have a point here. This is just another talking point for them to further, take away the tools that cops actually need to be able to effectively do their job. So, but let's get on ahead.
I think that's a great point that you just mentioned, Marlon. So you said that when cops have tools removed, in my opinion, when we start to remove options that cops have, we force them into making binary decisions. So what does that mean? Cops end up acting with less protection. So it's interesting to me, if we took two scales, right, and we said, okay, here is your scale of perpetrators, and here's your scale of the police department. We demilitarize the police department. To me, what that means, in my opinion, and based on what I read and based on what I know, is that we want to make the police look more approachable. We want to take away police equipment. We want to take equipment that looks like military, because the politicians are pushing this idea that it makes people safer, that if they're militarized, which means they have the appearance of military and training and equipment, that they're excessive and that they're using more force. But yet the perpetrators at the top of that scale, they're not demilitarized. We have perpetrators running the streets. They have equipment, which means guns. They have knives. They're armed. They're using mopeds. We have illegal military age males, especially in New York City, who are not being demilitarized. So the police department can't keep up with perpetrators. We're trying to scale away their options, forcing them into making binary decisions, acting alone, acting without protection. So it's quite interesting to me. So think about that. Perpetrators are still armed, but yet we're removing options from our police officers. And that's what militarization is, in my opinion. Militarized police department means you have equipment, you have training, you have tools to use. And in 2026, you need more tools than ever. And these protests, they're always teetering around potential riots. And every day there's crime going on in New York City that the police has to be prepared for. And John, you said it earlier, and I agree. Every situation could turn violent. A simple domestic dispute, a simple emotionally disturbed person call that Mom Donnie's campaign has actually pushed for social workers to respond. Someone in the executive perspective did a great job. They spoke about this, right? Voluntary and involuntary emotionally disturbed person. Someone who is voluntary, who is willing and wants to get help, that could change within seconds, and they could be someone who needs to be involuntarily removed by the police department, not some social workers that are demilitarized because they don't have the equipment, they don't have the appearance. It's just another outrage, another strike at the police department because they want the police department to look softer. That's the bottom line. Let's be honest. We're talking about they're emasculated. They don't want them to look tough, right? Marlon, you spoke about this. Rugged individualism. This administration wants to remove from rugged individualism. And that kind of sits on parallel with militarization. This is what's going on. Make them a softer target. John, you spoke about soft targets. Exactly. Let's make the police department, who is already a target, a softer target than they already are, making them more vulnerable to a perpetrated element than they are. And that not only does it affect the police department, affects public safety, affects the residents of New York City.
Yeah, so New York City Council to come out with this bill. It's a co-sponsored bill from the public advocate Jumaane Williams and Alexa Villas. Now, look, I don't think this bill has a chance in doing anything. It's actually more of a resolution than a bill. It's basically not worth the paper it's printed on. It's a waste of tax money that they even put this together. But what they're saying is what they've done is in the 2026, 12926, they put this resolution into the halls of city council. And the resolution's calling upon Congress to pass and the president to sign legislation that would eliminate the authority of the Department of Defense or the DOD to transfer surplus military property to federal, state, and local agencies for law enforcement activities. So, you know, we talk about here often that like it starts with these things that are absolutely ridiculous, right? And they get put on paper and everybody laughs at it. It's like, that's not passing. That's not passing. And year after year, they keep doing little bills that get closer and closer to the actual goal, things like this. And so it's like slow transgression after slow transgression until next thing you know, police have no firearms. And literal mobs run the streets of our major cities, kind of like how it is right now, right? It's kind of what it is right now. So they put this bill in. Look, is it passing right at this moment in time? Absolutely not. But the rhetoric, it's been 10 years in the making. So we probably have only about 3 to 4 years left where you're going to start to see where they're going to look to de-weaponize the NYPD and other law enforcement. And how do we know that? We know that through the fact that Zohran Mamdani's doubling down on his Department of Community Safety. And what's the Department of Community Safety? Ultimately, it's the NYPD without firearms, less paid, less benefits, much less effective, right? And so they put this bill out there, and it literally makes no sense because when you look at it and when you read it, you're like, wait. So you're not saying that the NYPD can't use helmets. You're not saying that the NYPD can't use heavy vests. You're not saying that the NYPD can't use heavy weapons. You're not saying anything that they can't use Bearcats. Bearcats are armored vehicles. You're not saying anything. What you're saying is you want the New York City taxpayer to pay for that. You'd rather the taxpayer pay for that than to take federal funds. So it literally makes absolutely no sense to me, this bill, other than the fact it's just another transgression and they just want to keep this in the public. It's the same thing with the defund the police, right? Defund the police started years before everyone was made aware of the term. So here what you're hearing here, when you hear demilitarize the police, or you don't want Department of Defense giving equipment to law enforcement, what you're hearing is we believe that law enforcement is very effective and has been very effective at quelling civil unrest, and we don't want them to have the ability to do so. We need our color revolution to take over, and we don't want an effective force at stopping what we want to stop. If we want to take over Columbia University, we want to take it over. And we want to take it over for good, and we don't want anyone have the ability to come in there and stop us from doing so. If we want to take over a train station, if we want to take over a roadway, if we want to take over a police precinct, we want the ability to do that without having an effective civilian law enforcement force that could come in there and stop us. That's what I'm hearing. And that's what I hear when I hear anyone talking about that they want to disband the SRG or they want to revamp the SRG, because honestly, it's not rooted in anything that the SRG has done. I'm like, tell me why you want to revamp it. Tell me why you don't like it. Don't tell me what Zohran Mamdani said. Don't tell me why you want to work with him and where you see the opportunity to get a consulting contract. Tell me exactly why the SRG is no good, what they've done that could be made better. Right? We could always improve. I'll agree every time. I'm not going to say we shouldn't work to improve. We should look to improve all of our systems, all of our law enforcement, every unit we have. That's 100%. But specifically the SRG, when I look at them these last 4 years, while the NYPD is completely tarnished its legacy, tarnish is standing in American in the American worker, how they look at New York City police officers today. That's not true for the SRG. I think they've done a great job, even though they've been hamstrung and held back by really feckless, incompetent, unqualified leadership.
Yeah, like we said, this defund the police. What does it actually mean, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you really want to defund the police, I mean, is she going to that the larger issue here is that there's a lot of technology that comes out of the military. Unfortunately, like, we may not like it, but that's just how things go. That's just how things go. If I were to read to you the list of tools that police use that actually come from the military, you'd really be shocked, that really come out of DARPA. I've mentioned DARPA before. This is basically the research wing of the U.S. military, and there are a lot of tools that come out of them. And the reason why most people don't realize this, but the U.S. government is the only corporation in the world who could spend 30, 40 years doing research on a tech and then put it out there. Because if a corporation were to do that, they would be bankrupt. Okay. So what happens is a lot of the research and the initial products, the initial tools are developed by DARPA, and then they eventually get surfaced into U.S. corporations and the military companies that are in the military industrial complex. And eventually those tools trickle down into other agencies, other civilian agencies. Okay. And those listed tools include things like Kevlar. They include the platform that the AR-15 rifle is based on. They include things like GPS. They include drones, shot spotter, night vision. If I go down the list, you'd be shocked how many things you use, even in your life, that you use that come from there, including the internet, by the way. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is my question is, what does she really mean by demilitarize the NYPD? Because if you really want to demilitarize the NYPD, are you going to change the way our society is structured, where we get these advancements from DARPA? Because you're not going to. You may not like it, but unfortunately, that's the way things work. Okay. And by the way, there's a lot of U.S. corporations whose technology also comes from DARPA, again, that you use in your daily life. And Palantir is also one of it. Palantir, Facebook, Google, those are all technologies that come out of DARPA and were surfaced. So my point in bringing this all up is, it's not so much the issue is not so much the tools that come out of it, but it's the usage of the tools and the transparency of the tools. Okay, it's fine. We talked many times about the drone situation and how it's how it's being used inappropriately. Okay, because the job wants to replace cops with the drones, when the drones are another tool that should be used to help the officer in the street do his job better. Okay, the problem isn't so much the tools. The problem is transparency and how the tools are used and where the back end data ends up. Okay, and these people in city council should be talking about that, but they're not. They're simply telling you simplistic surface level issues and telling you talking points about defunding the police without actually solving the real problems of using a lot of this technology. And this is one of the reasons why this is stupid. Okay. And we call this segment "What Dumb Idea is City Council pushing today?" And it's true. It's another dumb idea that they just think we're so stupid that we can't process the deeper issues here. We can't go beyond the surface level issues.
Well, Zohran Mamdani comes from an abolitionist anti-police ideology. And with that being said, he's described SRG as a militarized police force that prevents First Amendment activity, right? What he's described as the SRG as an organization, part of the NYPD, a unit part of the NYPD that intimidates people from having their First Amendment right to protest. That the appearance of SRG actually escalates the situation and not de-escalates the situation. Now, that sounds great to someone that is anti-police, that thinks the police are this, this devil, this evil thing. But we all know the reality. It sounds great, but the reality is, without a police force, these protests would be riot upon riot. It's the police at this point that is the only thing keeping these things at bay. And even with SRG and even with the NYPD there, an emasculated NYPD right now, we've seen, and John, you say it pretty well, that the crowd controls the NYPD rather than the NYPD controlling the crowd. So could you imagine the NYPD doesn't even have a presence? So I think that Zohran Mamdani has created this illusion that the NYPD is this force that intimidates people from protesting. And I think it's quite the opposite. I don't think it intimidates people from protesting at all. I actually think the NYPD makes people feel comfortable that they're out there protesting. Because damn well, there's plenty of people that actually want to protest out there, and they know that there's page agitators, and if it wasn't for the NYPD's presence, they would not be there. They do not want to admit it because they're anti-police, but if it wasn't for the presence of the police, they would not be there. It's like we all seen. Active and retired cops know exactly what I'm talking about. You go to a scene, and there's two guys that are having that stupid argument. Hey, man, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? When the police show up, what happens? They get louder. They get more emboldened, right? Because they feel comfortable. The NYPD's there. Really, the referee is there. They know that nothing's actually going to happen. So they taunt each other even more. And I believe it's the same thing when it comes to these protests, that people actually feel comfortable the NYPD's there and that they get emboldened. And if the NYPD wasn't there, reality would kick in, and it would kick in real fast.
Yeah, absolutely. You could see here, this is yesterday. They wanted to take over Columbia University again yesterday. So, and you see what happens. You bring the NYPD in for mass arrest. You bring the SRG in. See the SRG in the background right here. And they've been real light on the use of the SRG only because they don't like the optics of it. And to me, it's complete cowardice. It's complete cowardice. I don't care if you're active, if you're retired. If you're going to sit there and tell me that you're pro law enforcement and you're going to sit there and criticize and say, really don't like the SRG, you're full of shit. You're full of shit, or you're looking for a job, you're looking for a contract, because what don't you like about them? What don't you like about them? You don't like the way they look? Does it ruffle your feathers when you see them in their militarized style uniform? Like, what is it? What is it so bad about the SRG that they come in when they're called in, which they should be there much earlier to stop things from getting out of control, right? Because what we were always taught in the New York City Police Department and what we're taught as police officers is to not let things grow, right? If you see 20 people blocking the entrance of Columbia, nip that in the butt right away before it becomes 2,000. But what the NYPD has done since 2020 is go away from this, hold units like the SRG back, hold even the regular cops that are back sitting there that would have normally went in, moved, made arrests, and the supervisors, and have them sit around until it builds up to this big media spectacle. And now you're doing a mass arrest process and hundreds of people are being arrested. And so, it's funny, like, the rhetoric never matches the reality, and that is true, I think, with every politician across the board. But when you talk about public safety, I think I've seen the most disconnect from politicians with their political rhetoric to their reality. Because think about Mondani; he was getting rid of the SRG, and now we had two major protests yesterday. You had this protest at Columbia University. You had the nurses on strike, and by the way, he stands with nurses striking. So apparently, he's okay with abolishing the Taylor law. We're going to be contacting him soon about that because then municipal workers should be able to protest. And if municipal workers could have protested, guess what happens? The whole mandate never happens, right? So if you're standing with the nurses, you must stand with municipal workers, right? So he wants to he was going to disband the SRG, but he takes over as mayor, and what do you see? Every day on New York City streets, what happens? The SRG moves in, they restore order, they make arrests. Does it look like the police is so brutal here? Oh my God, look what he's doing to him. Oh my God. It's like, no, you wanted to take part in civil disobedience. Fine. Good for you. The male who's getting arrested right here, no big deal, right? Stood up, put his hands behind his back, treated humanely by the officers. And this was your period of civil disobedience. This is what you did. This is what you wanted to do. It's your First Amendment right to do so. I think that the protesters did it great. I think that the police did it great. What's wrong here? What are you disbanding the SRG for? And so what we've been hearing is, well, their mission is counterterrorism, not to police First Amendment activities. And again, I think that is the biggest crock of shit I ever heard in my life. Because again, First Amendment activities, do we not think that this is a terrorist threat? Do we not think that this is a terror target? Do we not think that every officer here should be highly trained in terrorism? Like, what, you're worried because they have too much training? I've never heard of something so ridiculous in my entire life. As an American police officer today, especially one in a big city, terrorism is a reality, is your everyday reality. I don't care if you're going to a domestic dispute. I don't care if you're going to an emotionally disturbed person. I don't care if you're policing a protest. I don't care if whatever it may be, you're at a sporting event. Counterterrorism is your reality. And we're being told that the SRG is no good because they should be a counterterrorism force fighting against terrorism. Well, I hate to break the news to you, but a lot of people hijacked these First Amendment activities, and they use this as a place to engage in domestic terrorism. And so what you're saying, if you're saying you want to disband the SRG, or you want to disband them, or you want to revamp them, what you're saying is you don't believe that counterterrorism is a part of law enforcement today. You don't believe that counterterrorism, you believe that counterterrorism and policing are separate entities. And so like, no, I just want to create another unit. Well, it's like, okay, well, we already have that other unit that responds solely to acts of terrorism. What's that called? It's called the Critical Response Command, the CRC. So I don't understand the calls. And again, I understand it when it comes from the left, because they're literally just saying that the SRG and the NYPD is too effective. They don't want this to happen, and they want you to look like a bunch of idiots, untrained, unsupervised, unable to quell this, unable to properly arrest these people. They want you to look like morons. I get it. They want a feckless police department. But when I hear it from law enforcement professionals, really, really bothers me. Really bothers me.
Oh, sorry, I got a freeze on my screen all of a sudden. Yeah. Keep in mind, one of those sponsors of one of the most vocal critics of defunding of getting rid of SRG and this whole movement is Jumaane Williams. And as we said, last week, Jumaane lives on a military base. Okay, he's on a military base, protected by the same technology and the same men with big guns that he's advocating that the rest of us not have access to, and protests, which he himself, he encourages people to go to do aren't protected. Okay. The thing is that the bad guys aren't stopping. They're not stopping. They're always looking to be more armed and use different techniques to cause mass casualty events. And you need, I mean, you may not like it again, but unfortunately that is the way things are, unless we fix the rest of society, and that doesn't happen overnight. But the bad guys are always looking to create mass casualty events, and we've seen it all over the world. We've seen it in this country numerous times. Okay. And unfortunately, you need men with big guns and the technology to stop these bad guys. And in order for us to have to be able to exercise a lot of our freedoms, we need men with big guns to protect us. And again, the issue isn't so much the technology, the issue is transparency and transparency of government. And this is something that the same people who advocate for government and the men protecting us to not have those tools are not advocating for government transparency. And it doesn't make sense. Okay. It probably doesn't make sense, because if you start down that road, then they have to be more transparent. And crumbs, as we talk about many times, the crumbs won't start flowing if they won't be able to flow if we have a transparent and accountable government.
So frankly, I think that Zohran Mamdani is actually insulting New York City residents and insulting the public, because you're not even asking for reform. You're asking to eliminate the SRG, which is a unit that developed in response to terrorist threats, potential terror attacks, the need for a mobile field force, the need for extra training, the need for extra training and more training to evolve, right? What Zohran Mamdani wants, and what some of the public and the politicians are actually pushing for, is for a 2026 police department to act and move with the same tools that they had in 1995. So we've evolved with technology, and we've evolved completely, and our threats have evolved also. And John, you said it before. Terrorist threats are a huge component in 2026 in policing, far different than pre-9/11 era, right? Every police department in this country has to have an apparatus prepared for potential terrorist attacks, and not only foreign but domestic. And these protests, while some of them are First Amendment activities, some of them are actually paid agitators that are actually domestic threats to this entire country, not just New York City. So we need an apparatus for that, and that's SRG. And the birth of SRG came from these threats. It came from terrorist threats. It came from the need of having a mobile field force, constant protest. So, which it was labeled as task force before, which is a mobile field force, but now SRG is just another fancy name, task with highly specific specialized training. So I don't understand. And John and Marlon, you both bring up a great point. That's what I just don't understand. Also, why would you not want a police force that has a unit specialized in a particular area where they're highly trained? To me, it's the same thing when you go to a doctor. If you're sick, you go to a general doctor. But then if they find something wrong in a specific area, you go to a specialized doctor to treat that illness or that sickness, whatever you have. And it's the same thing. The NYPD is your generalized police force, law enforcement, but SRG, like many other units, is a specialized unit to treat a symptom. And that symptom is protests that turn violent, that's potential terrorist threats. And the reality is, John, you said it earlier, all things need policing, even a basketball game. We need police. The police presence has to be there. And we need trained men and women. I don't understand this idea that if they're trained, that they're escalating the situation, that the police are actually the danger. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't even meet logic. It doesn't make sense. Would we rather have we'd rather have SRG run around with ball gags, dressed in pink scrubs with no training? I don't understand how does that de-escalate a situation? Because when there are I mean, who stands there to protect people when there are violent agitators like an idiot like Relly Rel who wants to create havoc? Who's going to stand there? Is it going to be Zohran Mamdani, social workers wearing pink scrubs and ball gags? Who's going to stop? No, it's the man with the gun. It's the NYPD, the men and women that put themselves out there, that have the training and then have the demeanor and have the poise to actually take control and do it in a calm manner and do it professionally. It just doesn't make sense. It defies logic. John, what are your thoughts?
So again, I don't think it defies. Like, I think the logic is, it's very simple. They want they want a breakdown of society for whatever reason it is, you know, and you know who's helping them the most? It's the law enforcement. Law enforcement is so aligned with Jumaane Williams' talking points and Tiffany Caban's talking points. It's not even funny. And it's not just the retired guys grifting for contracts. It's not just them. It's the active guys as well. They're so aligned with it. It's like just think about it. I watched someone sent me Jumaane Williams' Facebook post. And his Facebook post was all of the media and all of their headlines around the How Many Stops Act. It's the end of policing. It's this. It's that, right? The police department's going to stop. The NYPD is going to stop, right? And How Many Stops Act was 2 years ago, right? And now what do we have? We have Jessica Tisch, and you have a bunch of chiefs in the NYPD going up on stage, blatantly lying, misrepresenting crime numbers, and telling you, what are they telling you? Crime is at historic lows in New York City. And literally no one believes them. They don't even believe themselves. Nobody believes them. None of the cops believe them. No one that lives in New York City believes them. Nobody that travels to New York City or works in New York City believes that. But they're saying it anyway. And what does that prove? It proves that what Jumaane Williams was saying was public safety. Slowing down the police department, taking tools away from the police department, scrutinizing the police department, putting them under a microscope actually makes you safer. Demilitarizing the police department makes you safer. You know, I laugh because all these bills, I was always pissed about them. Always. My whole career. I'd look at them. I'd talk to my bosses about them. Talk to my commanding officers about them. Like, this is crazy. Don't worry about it. It's not going to pass. Diaphragm bill wasn't going to pass. You know, wasn't going to pass. Don't worry about it. What are you worried about? Don't worry about it. Diaphragm bill, it passed. What's the diaphragm bill? A police officer, regardless if you're violently resisting arrest, can't put pressure on your chest or your back. Intentionally or unintentionally. If they do so, it's a misdemeanor in New York City. That is current right now in New York City. But guess what? It makes you safer because we're at historic lows in crime. So I don't even blame Jumaane Williams and them. I blame law enforcement. I blame the law enforcement managers. Do I blame the rank and file cops? No. I blame the people that sit up there and hold the pocket of the politicians and lie for them. I blame you when you go out and you allow yourself to be used and your integrity to be used, and you have no problem watching someone get robbed, but putting down a report, it's the misdemeanor assault. I'm not going to feel bad for you when that shit comes back and bites you in the ass. As a matter of fact, I won't feel bad to come on here and talk about it because it's wrong, man. What you're doing is you're lying to the public and you're creating really, really bad times. You know how they say weak men create bad times? We're in the weak men creating bad times right now. This is the part of history that we're in right now. We're in the weak men creating bad times. Crime's down at historic lows, and all we got to do is just keep beating the shit out of the New York City Police Department and letting criminals roam free. That's what we need to do. We need to stop policing. And again, I'll just go back to the 1800s. You know, one of the big issues that was happening at that time was voter fraud. Shocker, you know, it doesn't sound familiar at all, right? And so what was happening was the police department at the time, prior to the Metropolitan Police Department being put in place, the police department was solely in charge of election integrity. Now, you could see how that went bad when Tammany Hall was also in charge of who they were going to appoint to the police department, right? So kind of hard for Tammany Hall to never lose an election, right? And so what they did is, if they knew you were going to vote for someone else, they told you to get the F out of there, or they beat the crap out of you, or they just fudged the complete numbers. And so they put in this militarily styled police department to secure elections. And what was happening prior to that is the federal government was like, screw this, screw this. Your police department's corrupt. You're not holding fair elections. And it's not even just affecting New York City. It's affecting national elections, because New York City affects national elections. We can't even get a president elected, and it's not real numbers. The voters are being disenfranchised. So what happened is the federal government is like, you know what? We're going to send federal agents to police New York City elections. And what did New York City do? New York City said, if you send federal agents here, we're going to lock them up. We're going to have our police department lock them up. Sound familiar to anybody yet, people? Sound a little bit like ICE, immigration, a little bit, just a little bit, and so, so what ultimately happened is they came to the resolution that will come with a non-politicized police force, which actually never came to fruition. But elections did get a little bit more secure. And now what we're seeing is, as we evolved and got better, now we're trying to go back to pre-1845, pre-1857. We want to go back to those times, and we want to completely emasculate law enforcement and empower our politicians. Like, I think their goal, if you just follow the logic, their goal is stated right there. They want a heavily politicized police force that responds only to their political whims. They want to be held completely unaccountable to the law. They don't want a free and fair system. They're actually, if they get their goal, their police force is going to look a lot worse than what it actually is right now.
Yeah, it's true. And the thing is, like, people like Alexa Vilas, she also sponsored some kind of anti-policing measures too. She was on this How Many Stops Act, and a couple other measures related to prison and Rikers. Well, related to jailing criminals and Rikers. The thing is, I think John has a point when he says that, when he talks about the people who are already in law enforcement, and that includes like the unions, because we should be hearing about the unions talking about transparency and about training. And we never do, and if we do, it's not at the volume that we should be hearing, because again, the issue isn't so much men with big guns, but we should be having those men with big guns having being, as much training as they can handle, and we're not getting it. And in general, we talk about the lack of training that this police department gives too, and again, these are all issues that would create an efficient and effective police department while using these tools. But these tools would be used properly. And again, if we had transparency, the public would know where these tools are being used, and where the data associated with it would be used. But we're not. And I think people like Jumani are and Avilas are ignorant of they're not really educated enough on law enforcement. And I think this is where the unions and, like John said, people in the policing profession, I think the responsibility is on them to really let these people know that if they remove certain tools and they remove certain units, you're just making things worse for the people that you're claiming to be protecting. If in a lot of ways, if the SRG isn't there, to manage these protests, these protests would get out of hand. And again, SRG is the only unit that's it's their purview to manage protests. The regular patrol guys, we don't get the training to do it. We don't, and we certainly don't get enough of the training to do it. So you want to remove these guys, and you can't look further down the road at the consequences of removing these guys from the consequences are if they protest in your neighborhood, that protest might evolve into a riot, and there's going to be property damages, and it's making life miserable for the people in those communities that you claim to be protecting. So again, John has made a very good point about that. And again, we always say that the union members should be on here. At least I personally think they should be on here once a month, giving us updates on what they're doing and letting you guys who are on patrol know how much they're working for you to improve your job. And they should be using things like social media as a platform to help educate. If they don't have direct access to people like Aviles and Jumani, they should be using public social media as a podium to advocate for all these things that we talk about here.
That's a great point, Marlon. Great point. And I see it as, well, like the executive perspective, right? We have Ask an Executive. It's an opportunity for people to actually ask real life executives who served in the police department, who climbed the ladder all the way up to chief, to ask questions that you normally couldn't have and have these real conversations. And I think it would behoove the unions at this point to see the Finest Unfiltered as an alignment, as a valuable tool where if they wanted to come on here and have a conversation with us, and like you said, Marlon, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, and speak to the public, because with over 100,000 subscribers, we have the grasp of the NYPD. This is a great outlet to actually speak to the cops about what's going on and actually speak to them on a level without the politicians or political interference. So I think that's a great point. I think the unions, if they could put their egos aside and actually put the desire to actually help the cops, right? Because the cops deserve better. Instead of giving money to politicians that are anti-police, giving money to abolitionists, come on a podcast or a network like this and talk to your people. We've had Scott Monroe on here before, but I think all union heads should come on here often and speak to their members. This is a very valuable outlet where we have, as I said before, where we have the grasp of the NYPD. Now, going back to talking about SRG and training, I think it's interesting. I find it interesting often where politicians love to use the word de-escalation as some type of buzzword. And I think de-escalation is a skill, not just a slogan. And how do you learn a skill? By training. You have to constantly train. And training is something that we should really push, especially by the politicians, should push that our police force is constantly being trained. And I think they actually tried to sell this adverse effect. And the reality is, the more training that cops have, or any organization, the better they're going to be and more effective. And I think it's quite the opposite. The more training that the NYPD has, and especially the SRG, a specialized unit that is addressing First Amendment activities, protests that always teeter on violence, prepared for it, and the more training that they have, is actually going to require less force than more force. This idea that I don't get it, that if you have less training that you're going to have to use less force, it doesn't make sense. And this comes from people that who suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, that don't understand how police work actually is managed, and they don't understand how behaviors work for people. And when people are at heightened levels of vulnerability, and they're being loud and emboldened, if it's met with a police force that is acting in the same manner, it's only going to make things worse. And how do you keep anxiety levels down and keep people calm and poised? That's through training. And what do you get through training? You get pressure tested. Being constantly pressure tested is why the NYPD has always been so effective. Why I think the NYPD, LAPD, Chicago, these big cities are so effective as police departments, because not necessarily are they constantly getting more training, and I think some of them are, But because you're dealing with that metropolis, that voluminous on a daily basis, and so you get more skill on how to deal with people. And I will say this: there is no one better at controlling people and moving crowds without touching them than the NYPD. And I think hands down, the NYPD is unmatched when it comes to that, because NYPD law enforcement, any police officer on a daily basis, whether there's a high amount of criminal activity happen on a particular day or not, you're just used to dealing with a mass amount of people, especially cops that work in Manhattan or Union Square, Times Square. They're constantly dealing with mass crowds, and you learn how to monitor crowds and how to actually move people without touching them. And that's through training and the actual real life application of doing it. But tailoring back for the NYPD, tailoring back for these units, and how social workers do it, all I can say is this: good luck. Get the body bags ready.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm just going to go back and say it again. I honestly think that the enemies within are more dangerous than the maniacs and that are sitting in city council. I really do. I really think, like, you know, Juju's on here. He's saying that we're fear merchants. So we're not fear. Like, we're just, first of all, we're just talking, right? You don't see us. We're not emotional about this topic, but it is something that, you're an active lieutenant in the NYPD. You should be pretty emotional about it. You're teaching youth in John Jay University. You should be pretty emotional about it. You should be a lot more emotional than we are about it. You're a lot younger than us, bro. So, but just think about all of the stuff that city council has done. They've taken away qualified immunity from you. They've passed the How Many Stops Act. They've passed the Right to Know Act, the right to record, right? You have to give business cards, the disciplinary matrix. I mean, there's so much. And all of it was slow transgression. All of it started out as a little complaining in city council hearings. Then it started out as a bill that didn't get passed to eventually a bill that gets passed, right? And what you're hearing now is you're hearing from police executives, you're hearing from former retired police executives that, too much training. The SRG has too much training. We just need something different. Something that doesn't involve terrorism. Something they were trained for long guns. They can't possibly go out into police First Amendment activities. It's like, so training's bad? Are they drawing down on people with assault rifles? No. Right? When the shit hits the fan, guess what they do? They come in, they put their helmet on like they should. I mean, but even that, you see, when you look at these protests, you see less batons, you see no helmets, you see no shields, and that is the emasculation from within, not from the outside, because you've had police executives say, it doesn't look right. It's an escalation. It doesn't, I don't like the way it looks. It doesn't look appropriate. Well, you know what doesn't look appropriate? It doesn't look appropriate when I walk down the street and I can't walk that way. It doesn't look appropriate when you have families that worked their entire life to send their kids to a university. They put their life savings so that their kids could go live a different life than they have and go get educated at a school, and they can't walk in the university, and they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to send their kid there. Their whole entire life savings was spent sending their kid to that university. That doesn't look nice. That doesn't look okay. I'd rather see cops with helmets clearing the way and ensuring that my kid could go to school in the university than what some ballless police executive has to say about it. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to me. And so, it just keeps happening, and you hear it further and further, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. Absolutely no one to blame but ourselves. Look, here's another transgression. You're going to hear this now. And I've been saying for over a decade, I used to laugh about it, like at work. And I used to say that desk appearance tickets, part of the desk appearance ticket, like going forward, is going to be is going to be like, oh, here's the 212 recruit flyer. Here, we have to give you this flyer to ensure that you could also get signed up. And so, I believe that desk appearance are given out way too often, and they shouldn't be at all. I think there are some offenses that we're giving them out for that people have no business getting a desk appearance for, including assaulting a police officer. That never happened in the past. In the past, you spent a night in jail. And like I said, a night in jail is probably the best social service you could provide to a youth. I mean, it saved my life. I spent a weekend in jail, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I want to be a gangster. I'm like, I don't think I want to. I got to pee next to this guy. I got to crap next to this guy. I can't leave this 4x4 cell. And then I'm going down, and I have to sit in a courthouse with all these wackos that are trying to show who's got a bigger set of balls by telling everybody what they got arrested for, when I got arrested for absolutely no reason. So it saved my life. It put me on a proper course. And I know a lot of my friends the same thing. A lot of my friends the same thing. A night or a weekend in jail is the best social service. It's evidence-based to have deterred youth from committing crime in the future, or being involved in criminal activity, or hanging around idiots. And it'll definitely teach you a hard lesson. It taught me a hard lesson, and so what they want to do is eliminate that. And I've talked about that at length since coming out in publicly and speaking about how, a desk appearance ticket is not always necessarily a good thing, because I said, if me and my friends would have gotten desk appearance tickets every time we got arrested or we got in trouble by the cops, I don't think I ever would have been a cop, and I don't think most of my friends would have turned out to be professionals. And so talking about slow transgressions here, let's hear what the next thing is. The next thing is, now we went to where basically people are getting DATs after they're assaulting old women, after they're robbing people, after they're snatching phones. They're getting them for basically anything, carrying a firearm, whatever. And any offense you could think of, there's been someone in this last 6-7 years that has got a desk appearance ticket for it. There's been someone there. And so now that's not good enough anymore. So now we have to move away from that even. So now what Tiffany Caban is saying is that she wants you to now, instead of actually putting handcuffs on someone, instead of bringing them back and conducting a proper investigation and see if in fact you could even give them a desk appearance ticket, even though everyone qualifies for one now, including illegals, including people that you don't know where they live, including people that are flight risks, including people that don't have ID and you don't know who the hell they are. Now she doesn't even want that. She doesn't believe that that's consistent with the law. She wants you to actually give a summons right there on the spot. So just think about that in context, right? You have these anarchists mixed in with useful idiots, mixed in with paid protesters and paid agitators. And they're out there on the streets of New York City, and they shut down Columbia University. And instead of locking them up and bringing them to the precinct and releasing them in 3 hours and them going right back to do it all again, now instead, Tiffany Caban wants you to just issue a summons on the scene, and then they just stay right there and they just keep doing that. So it's further emasculation. And what you're going to hear is some ballless police executive talk about how, you won't hear it this year. You'll hear how ridiculous it is this year. Maybe next year you'll hear how ridiculous it is. But about, 2 years from now, you'll hear active police executives and retired police executives with all their consulting companies. They'll talk about how it's a great strategy and how, people shouldn't be arrested. And so here, this is the start of it. This is
Take a Knee Consulting.
Yeah, it's exactly what it should be, the name of it. We should actually start that. Take a Knee Consulting. We'll tell you what you're going to hear from these ballless men. So listen to what she's saying. This is a hearing to confirm Mondani's pick for Corporation Counsel. Listen to what she's saying.
So the NYPD has a practice of unlawfully arresting people for low-level offenses, and then instead of issuing them DATs, those desk appearance tickets that are statutorily required by CPL 15020, the results of that has been that hundreds of New Yorkers are being subjected to the harms and dangers of remaining in extended police custody. our state legislature has made it clear, right? They have determined that they should be able to return to court with a DAT to face these charges. And the impact of this is also very serious. We saw last year, at least 5 New Yorkers died in NYPD custody. And so in the case of Douglas versus the city of New York, the NYPD is continuing to fight to maintain its practice of arresting people and then issuing those DATs only after they are held in detention at police precincts, rather than having the practice of issuing that ticket right where they're stopped or in the immediate area of which that stop takes place. So what are you going to do to ensure that the NYPD complies with the 150/20 requirement that people receive those DATs in lieu of arrests?
I'm certainly going to.
Well, we don't need to hear what he's going to say because obviously Mandani picked him, right? So, I mean, you could know what his answer is. But what do you think about what she's saying here? I mean, it's like she's literally telling you the future. Like if you right now you can mark this date and time. 2 years from now, you're gonna see an order from the NYPD that you're no longer going to bring people back to the precinct for DATs. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, this fits in with my theory that again, all this progressivism is like now don't get me wrong, a lot of them are indoctrinated and they're Muppets. They're just repeating the talking points that has been told of them, and they're just repeating surface level talking points. But the smarter ones used progressivism as a cover for austerity. So the reason why I'm saying that is, I talk a lot about the budget of a city and how, they have budget issues. Clearly, 2 billion for the remainder of this year and 12 billion for the next coming years. And I believe it's actually going to be higher for the next coming years because we haven't hit that refinancing wall that I mentioned episodes ago, where a lot of these commercial properties have to refinance, and they're refinancing for rates that are a lot higher, if the banks will allow it, that are a lot higher than years ago. And that creates a massive hole in the city's budget. But anyway, they're using progressivism as a cover for austerity measures. In this case, if you don't bring people back to the prison, to the station house, you're not lodging people. You're not. You're reducing overtime. You're reducing certain costs of the costs of lodging and housing prisoners.
Wait, you think that Tiffany Caban cares about finances or understands it?
No. What I'm saying is the people who give her.
Wait, I just thought about.
No, the people who give her
understands finances.
No.
She's worried about the financial impact of anything she's doing.
Well, the people above her who give her marching orders do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying there are two people here. They're the Muppets who are just repeating the talking points that are told of them, and then there are the smarter people above them. And behind these DSA members at the top, you have the academics who are in lockstep with Wall Street and the finance guys and the money men, and they know what they're doing. And they use these Muppets on the street. These Muppets who, by the way, they're all broken people. Okay, if you look at their backgrounds, they're all broken people, and they're malleable, which is why they put broken people in charge of government. Broken people like Eric Adams. Okay, I'm sorry, they have like childhoods that are like, when you look at it, it's like it's not a complete package. So they're easily malleable, and they believe they're gonna repeat the talking points told of them, and those talking points are just surface level stuff. Underneath it, though, is the real agenda here is to kind of slow walk us into these austerity measures and make us okay with it. Okay, because we're not cutting government services because we don't have the money. We're cutting it for an empathetic reason. Okay, we're cutting it for equality and for justice. We're doing it to help minorities. That is a way to emotionally manipulate us into accepting it, as opposed to if you just told us, hey, listen, we're gonna have to cut your government services because we don't have the money for it, because we screwed up and we blew all your money and stupid shit. Okay, they don't want to tell us that. So I don't think Tiffany understands the deeper meanings, the deeper agenda here. She's one of those Muppets who will repeat it. But but I absolutely do believe this is part of that overall agenda to empty out Rikers Island, to incarcerate less people, and by the way, they have technology that they want to monitor. They want to monitor prisoners outside of incarceration, tracking and surveillance, and that lowers costs because again they are broke and they don't want you to know just how broke we are. So
shout out to Patrick Donahue. He says 907 and Mullen is using the word austerity. Take that, Eric. So yeah, this is a day of vocabulary, brother. No, you're listen, you're 100% right. I think that the problem also is the ideology of these wackos that are part of city council, right? Think about Tiffany Caban. This is also the same person that believes that burglary is a minor, low-level crime. And we know burglary is far from that, right? Anyone that invades your home, that to me is a violent crime, right? Who wants to go back to their home after it's been ransacked and been invaded by someone you don't know? That's not a good feeling. That's not a low-level crime. And desk appearance tickets in New York City need to really be restricted at this point, especially in a state with bail reform, where people are going through a revolving door anyway. They're coming in and they're going out. So why do they need a desk appearance anyway? Why do they need a desk appearance ticket? What's wrong with bringing someone back to a precinct in a controlled environment where we can actually process them, get fingerprinted, do all the necessary paperwork so that paperwork that goes to court is actually thorough and prepared properly? Now, I understand there are certain things that could require a ticket, but we're talking about very serious low-level crimes that are on par with traffic tickets. But what Tiffany Caban's talking about is she's talking about actual crimes, because her position is that people get arrested because of their race. A lot of it has to do with poverty, their mental illness, their social economic status. Right? She boxes criminal activity into these categories. So Tiffany Caban is just a complete wacko. Everything that she says is off base. John and Mullen, if you remember, she referred to burglary as a low-level crime. I don't see how burglary is a low-level crime. What is a burglary?
Desk appearance.
A desk appearance, exactly.
And what's sick is that desk appearance tickets now. You know that, right? They're releasing people now.
So they're actually releasing people on burglary. So listen, we have bail reform, desk appearance tickets. At this point, really, they don't want you to lock up anyone anymore, right? We saw that crazy maniac that believes that if someone has a suspended license, that they should be monitored. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. So let's not, what are we going to do? Eradicate all the jails, eradicate all the rehabilitation places, keep people on the street, and we'll just pay for monitoring services right now? And you know what that equates to, Marlon? You know, it's more AI. That's exactly what it is. Let's have AI monitor all these things. Who's getting the private contracts out of these? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. It's cheaper that way, you know?
No, yeah, look, that was a great explanation, Marlon. But like, I'm talking surface level. Like, I understand what you're saying, like 100%. Like, they're idiots. They get pushed these bills. Like we showed you Emily Gallagher's bill the other day, right? Where she wants to install this like system in cars. Like, do you think that was her idea? No, it's someone telling her you're gonna push this and get this in everybody's car, and that's it. And I'll continue to fund your campaign. You know, so I totally get it. But in order to push back at it, like, people have to understand what's happening in the simplest form at the lowest levels. Like, they have to, and just showing you what works. So first we started decriminalizing crimes, right? We made them, they were no longer crimes. So now the police can't detain you for them, right? So they became violations. So now it's okay to piss in the street, shit in the street, drink in the street. All of these things are okay. It's okay to smoke pot in the street. And what did that lead to? It led to more crime. It led to more violent crime. It led to police having less tools to stop crime spikes when they happen. But the public doesn't know that. Well, the public knows it because they feel it. But the media, the legacy media, and the police department are claiming, no, that was good. It was a good thing that we decriminalized all these crimes. It was a good thing that we disbanded anti-crime. It was a good thing that cops can't put pressure on someone's chest or neck anymore, or back. It's a good thing. All of these things are good things because crime's down. And so now here you have the same thing. You're watching where Cops can't be hands-on anymore at protests. Cops are pulled back. And now we're hearing that too much training is a bad thing. If cops are too trained, they can't police protests. Too much training is bad. I don't think there is a unit in the New York City Police Department or in any law enforcement in any police department across this country that is too much training. I don't think there's one. I honestly don't think there's one. Besides maybe the training unit, but they're never going out on the fucking street anyway, so it doesn't really matter, right?
John, I don't even know what does that mean. What does that mean? That's too much training.
I'll tell you who has too much training. Like, you get a guy like Tariq Shepard, who you sent to the FBI National Academy, or any other training that you sent him on. That was too much training because he's never utilizing it. It was a waste of taxpayer funds. That's too much training. It's not too much training because he was going to go out in the street. Anyone that's out in the street, there's no such thing as too much training. So saying that the SRG has too much training is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous statement. It's ridiculous. So what you're hearing now is, well, we dumbed down all these crimes and we made them eligible for desk appearance tickets. So, we bring you in, we do a bullshit investigation, and regardless of what we find, more often than none, we hand you a desk appearance ticket and we let you go. Now what we're hearing is, well, we don't even want that process. We don't even want it to where you got to get fingerprinted and we could see if possibly you're wanted for murder or anything else. We want you to just hand the summons in the street for a desk appearance ticket. And again, that's where we're headed, people. We're headed that way. Mike Barino brings up drones, right? And I think drones is a good point, because we're talking about the militarization, the demilitarization of the NYPD. They're so concerned with it. New York City Council is so concerned with it. Would you rather, as a taxpayer, have the New York City Police Department build not one, but two command centers to control these drones, spend millions and millions of dollars for these drones that none of them are flying now because it's too cold? Not one of them. They're not acting as a first responder. That thing kind of just went by the wayside, huh? All those millions of dollars. And now are they a good tool that could be used? Yeah. When used properly, they're a good tool. When they could be deployed, yeah. Or did they stop anyone from getting killed subway surfing? Absolutely not. They did not. Are they going to replace a police officer? Absolutely not. They're not going to. But if we're talking fiduciary duty here, New York City Council isn't saying we don't want the NYPD to have drones. They're not saying that at all. What are they saying? They're saying you can't take the drones from the federal government. Why not? It's cheaper for the taxpayer. If you have no issue with them having drones, why are you trying to stop them from getting it from the federal government? You want to pay for it? You want it to come out of your budget? I mean, if I'm in city council, I'm going to say the things that we're going to purchase anyway, I'd rather have the federal government purchase it for me. I'd rather it not come out of the budget that we passed. But that's not what city council is saying. And why is that? Oh, because Marlon alluded to it earlier. Because if I take the stuff from the federal government, then my friends don't get any crumbs. Then the people who are paying for me, and the people who are slipping me money under the table, and the people who are supporting my campaign, I can't give them a contract. It's simple. I mean, no one's watching it. It's just this. They're doing the 3-card Monty. And that's all they're doing. It's simple as it is. And at the same time they're doing it, they're making your city less safe. They're making our quality of life horrible. I mean, look at New York City right now. The snow's still all over the place. The garbage is piled over people's heads. I don't remember a time. We had some pretty bad snowstorms in New York City. I remember, I think 96 was a horrible year. We had some pretty high snowstorms. I don't remember a time that the garbage was piled higher than people, taller than people. I mean, it's piled everywhere. And what are we doing? Oh, let's just keep making bills and pick at the NYPD. Let's just keep doing that.
Yeah, before we go on, I just like to, I just like to welcome Benito to the show. I don't know if he's been there before, but that name certainly seems like the first time I've seen it on the show. So I'd like to welcome him as a future regular viewer of the show.
He's been here. He's been here. Oh, yeah.
He's been there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's related to Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Uh-huh. I mean, I find it amusing to a guy using a screen name Benito telling me to go back to Guyana.
Oh, you saw that,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the wrong country, Benito. It's Grenada. Okay, though we're not that far apart, and it's same Caribbean, So
Marlon, could you give him a map lesson? He got confused.
But shout out to all my Guyanese cops out there. But Benito is in the there's a quote attributed to Gandhi, right? I think Benito is well on his way here, Except we're gonna repurpose this quote, and by the way, it's actually it was actually not Gandhi who originally said it, by the way. It was an American, I think he was a labor union member back in the 1800s. Anyway, but we're going to repurpose it here, because first, people like Benito, they get angry at us, okay? They might have been past a clip where we're talking about something. They get angry at us. Then they jump on here and they start rage posting at us and rage tweeting at us online. And then they get tired and see that it doesn't work, and that we have a nuanced take on the show that looks at it from a logical perspective, and we're not going to get pulled in emotionally by this, okay? And eventually the next step, Benito, is we win and you become a regular viewer and you see and you agree with a lot of our points, even though you may be coming at it from a different perspective than we are. Okay. So you're on your journey here. And Eric says you were here before, but I'm going to personally welcome you to the show. And we thank you for your comments in the chat. We help you for making it even more of a lively chat. Okay. But these, again, like, city council likes to slow boil us into all these things, like the boiling frog I've mentioned before, right? Slowly we take baby steps, and then the next day you look around and holy crap, it's actually been the wacky ideas they propose over there becomes law, and what you're seeing them talk, you might think it's wacky now, but give it some time, and I bet you it's going to be normalized and it's going to happen.
Mo, that's a great point. I think that not only does city council propose stupid bills, but I think they've just gone completely insane. For instance, when we talk about cops having to give out business cards, like, that should just be a policy by the NYPD, but that actually became law. So handing out a business card is actually law. And so the cops have to give it by law that the city council passed, which I think is insane, right? The Right to Know Act, giving a business card. And that's why I think city council really overstepped their position. I think it's really insulting to the residents of New York City. I mean, the residents of New York City voted for you to do what's best for the city residents, not so that you can play games and play this game of checkers constantly. And I don't say chess because they're not that intelligent, but to play checkers of like, okay, all right, what bill are we going to pass today that attacks the NYPD? And they're all pulling these strings and they're playing games, and who can come up with the stupidest idea? But they're not serving the public. I think it's really insulting. These people have voted in time and time again, tenure after tenure, staying in these spots. I don't know why we keep voting for these people. And I guess it does come down to voter apathy and just not informed and educated about your politicians. But the fact that, for instance, handing out a business card is not just an NYPD policy and something handled administratively, but to actually make it law, I think it's really overstepping, and it's just gone way too far, this attack on the NYPD. And I believe an attack on the NYPD is an attack on the residents, because the NYPD is responsible to keep people safe. It's important that people feel safe. And this idea of less training is more effective, it just doesn't make sense to me. I believe that more training allows room for fewer mistakes. We should want our police department to have more training. And even with excessive or extensive training, mistakes will still happen. It's just a reality. We're talking about a human element here. But the NYPD, and the boots on the ground are doing the job to the best of their ability of what they're presented with. Someone had put a comment in here earlier that we need better soldiers, and that I just don't understand. I think the NYPD is doing the job that they can do. What we need is better leaders. We need better leadership, and the leadership has to inform and stand up to Zohran Mamdani and the administration and say, hey, this doesn't work. We need SRG. We need SRG. And here's why. SRG was the birth of, because of potential terrorist attacks, whether they're foreign or domestic. There's a necessary element for it. And here's why training is so effective. And let me show you. Why don't they show Zohran Mamdani? Put him in a scenario, one of those gun scenarios with the simulator, and say, here's what happened when someone is not trained in comparison to where someone is trained. Give him a little taste of it and find out what it's like to be a New York City police officer and have to make split-second decisions with training. And imagine you making those decisions without training. So here we are dealing with just radicals. I mean, the city council is just, somehow we found the most radical maniacs in New York City and said, let's get these people together, and they're going to be the ones that vie for the people of New York City. Just absolutely insane. New York City, to me, just loves chaos. It's the upside down world. It just doesn't make any sense. So, Smith, Mike Smith, how you doing, brother? I know he had a good comment here earlier about Levon Holly. We'll read it out later, but he says, we will never get better soldiers with the leadership people witness. Yes, leadership is far more important. And we see these attacks constantly by the city council. The city council is always attacking the boots on the ground. I think it's time, if the city council wants to start proposing bills and change law, why don't they attack the leadership? Because the leadership that actually implements policy is the leadership that actually puts the cops in that direction, instead of attacking the cops doing their job.
And then, you know, the other thing when we talk about demilitarizing the police, you know, Marlon brought this up about how, like, what about the systems that they use? Like, what about the computer applications that are all coming off the military? So this comes out yesterday from Mark Levine. Mark Levine, you may remember him. He was the Manhattan Borough president. During COVID, he was, what I would like to say, he was engaged in fear porn. He went from being a politician to a vaccine salesman to a expert on respiratory health and what would keep you safe. And all he did was push fear porn all over his social media. And then he wanted to strip property from the Russian oligarchs. He wanted to seize property. I was like, oh, this sounds normal. And then guess what? New York liked him so much, he overwhelmingly won to become the controller of New York City. And what is he doing immediately? Immediately, he's going after pension funds, right? So this is what Mark Levine said. This is actually the wrong graphic. I apologize for that. Mark Levine has said that New York City's pension system is a significant shareholder in Palantir Tech. We are using that leverage. I have made a formal request for the company to secure a third-party assessment of the legal, reputational, civil rights, and human rights risk associated with their work with ICE. So, you know, the left in New York is worried about the militarization of police. They're not worried about using Palantir systems from the military. They're not worried about any of that. What Mark Levine is solely concerned about is Palantir's work with ICE. Now, you know, when I was younger, I would invest based upon my political beliefs. And that came to bite me in the ass several times. I sold Apple once. I think I had a few thousand shares of it, and I sold it because of something they did that I don't even remember what it was. But I stopped letting my politics get in the way of my investment. I take Warren Buffett's advice on that. I don't take his advice about who to hang out with. I don't take his advice about who to donate with. I don't take his advice about who to vote for. But I do take his investment advice because the guy's made a lot of money, right? And his investment advice is don't let politics get in the way of your investments. And so what Mark Levine is doing is he's foregoing his fiduciary duty as the controller of New York, and he wants to put his politics in New York City pensions. So potentially he's going to follow down the same road as Brad Landa. What Brad Landa did is he divested New York City pensions out of oil. He divested them out of Russian stocks. He divested them based upon his politics. And the largest bull run in American history, if you're in New York City pension system, you missed it all. You had literally anemic returns compared to the rest of the market. And it was only done because of Brad Lander's moves. So Mark Levine is following down that same political road path. And the unions, again, and the people who sit on these pension boards are silent about it. Now, if you have an issue with Plantier because you believe in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, it will no longer be a good investment, then that's a totally different argument. But what he's doing is he's using his leverage with his investment in Plantier to basically extort Plantier to tell them that they can't work with ICE. Why could they work with the NYPD, though? And me personally, I know a lot of people that aren't fond of what Plantier is doing. But I'll tell you, me personally, I invested in Plantier at $15. I still own them today. And I still think they're going to grow and that they're going to make money. This is an investment advice for you. But I'm not selling at this point. Regardless, I don't necessarily like their politics. I don't necessarily like Plantier's CEO. But I'm not letting that get in the way of good investment advice. And that's on a personal level. But as a comptroller, he has a legal authority. He has a legal obligation to not put his politics in the way of investing. And that's exactly what he's doing. And none of it makes sense. And, you got to think everything they do and everything they say, they literally contradict themselves every step of the way. And this is just another clear example of it. You want to demilitarize the police, but not their computer systems. You don't want to work with Plantier. You don't want to invest in Plantier only if they work with ICE. None of it makes any sense. This is something that, again, we talk about like with the politics, where it's not only affecting your quality of life, your way of life, it's also going to affect your finances in the future. And again, you all got your head in the sand. You all got your head up your ass. And your unions are watching exactly what's happening, and they're not saying anything about it. So, you guys said before, they should come on here monthly. They shouldn't come on here monthly because they'll look like fools if they came on here monthly. Like, they shouldn't come on here ever because they don't care, dude. They don't care. They're self-serving. They don't work for the membership. And it's obvious. You know why they won't come on here? Because just like city council, just like these feckless, ballless police executives, just like these politicians, you ask them one question about anything they're doing, and they can't answer it. That's why.
Yeah, I think the thing that's in common with these leftists and let's say these politicians and government members of government executives is that they're both detached from the consequences of the stuff they push or the stuff that they remain silent on. We talked about it a couple episodes ago about like the unions, and in the case of the Detectives Endowment Association, Scott Monroe, the president lives in Massapequa, in a rather I believe Hop Hog out there in Long Island. And the thing is, again, they're detached from the consequences of New York. So while he'll remain silent on the things that we talk about on here and the issues affecting cops' ability to do their jobs out there in the city, but he lives out there in Long Island and he doesn't face the same consequences. And it's this in a lot of ways, it's the same thing with these leftists, okay? Because people like Jumanji lives on a military base, okay? He lives in a military base in a community that doesn't see the effects of the laws being passed there. And same thing with all these other people. You know, they're completely detached from the consequences of their measures. And in case of Mark Levin, he's a big proponent of congestion pricing. So you know they'd like nothing better than to build a wall from 96th Street on down and keep you peasants out of it. So again, they would remain detached from the real consequences of their shitty policies. Okay. And I'm pretty sure Mark Levin himself also has another home somewhere out there in a great area that he could run to, and again escape the consequences of his nonsense. It's not about the technology, because every technology can be used for evil. It's about the transparency of it and how government uses it and how government informs the people of what they're doing with it. And again, one other point is that Mark Levin is also a big proponent of green energy, right? And in his role as comptroller now, you have to wonder if he's also planning to invest the pension funds into BS green energy programs. And even Trump himself has noted how ineffective those programs are, and how much they've been a boondoggle and lost money for the companies involved. And like, you have a lot of these car companies that are writing off the costs of writing off their losses from having invested in EVs. For one, you had Ford, who lost 20 billion. You had GM, 2.7 billion. You had you have even Tesla now, which is their balance sheet isn't looking too good with their losses from with their inability to sell their EVs, and they're the best EV brand in America. So you have to wonder now if the next step is for him to be investing in this nonsense. And this is the danger of putting ideologues in charge of your money now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, right? So Mark Levine, as the comptroller, he's acting as the fiduciary for the city. And the problem that I see that where cops, active and retired, need to be informed and actually pay attention is that the pension is being promoted as this type of like budget proprietary apparatus. And what does that mean then? That part of budgeting in New York City is watching the pensions, and that they're looking as the pensions as part of the fiscal crisis. And that's absolutely far from the truth, because the pension is actually, in a sense, it's actually deferred compensation for the NYPD, right? Because the NYPD police pension fund is its own fund. And a pension is extremely necessary, right? Because I always say policing is for the young. It's for young men and women, right? We have some people that get older and they're in leadership positions, but the reality is policing itself is a young man's job. And that's why you get a pension. You get a pension because physically the body gets beat up, and psychologically the mind gets beat up also through years of policing, and it's necessary to have a pension. So a pension is not a gift. It's earned compensation. And when we have comptrollers like Mark Levine, he hasn't said he wants to cut the pension, but I believe that they're trying to find ways to cut it also. They're using it as a budget fiscal crisis, looking at the pension. So the pensions, we have to really pay attention. Pension is not a guarantee. You have to look at cities like Chicago, look at cities like Baltimore, Detroit, what has happened with their pension systems. Now, fortunately, ours is much stronger, but we still have to pay attention. You have to pay attention, be knowledgeable of who your comptroller is, because they have a lot of power and they are the fiduciary for your pensions.
Yeah, you want to laugh? So a few years back, FDNY, the head of their pension system, and Brad Lander, who was the controller at the time, they were divesting out of Russia because of the war in Ukraine. Right? So they said, we're going to divest. They did this whole media spectacle. And I'm like, look, and what they said is, this is a fiduciary stance. It's not a political stance, which is bullcrap. They said, because the United States is going to put sanctions on Russia, their market's going to fall down. So I sent a FOIA request, and I requested what securities did they sell? Russian-based securities did they sell at that time? And what was the value of those Russian-based securities at the time? And the reason I did that is because I wanted to show that, in fact, it was against their fiduciary duties. And when they sold at the exact lowest point that they should have. And it was fiscally irresponsible, and they harmed firefighters' pensions. Right? Because I want this to stop happening. I don't want this to happen to any pension system at all. I don't care if you're a cop, fireman. I don't care if you're a teacher. This should not happen. This is absolutely ridiculous. The same way we allowed politics to infect policing is the same way now we're allowing politics to affect our finances. Like I said, I made a mistake earlier on in my life. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to do that again. I can't control the world. I can't stop the world from going the way it is. I might as well make the money for my family that I have to. So I asked for all that data. They won't give it to me. Why won't they give it to me? Because they know that if they give it to me, what am I going to do? I'm going to post online. I'm going to say, they sold here, and here's the security today. That's worth 200-300% more than when they sold it at. You know, and so like it's really scary, dude. It's really scary what's happening, because again, it all ties in. When the word demilitarization triggers me, because it really starts to you just see how it blends into every aspect of policing, everything. Like, you can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. And the same way they want to emasculate the SRG and disband them or revamp them and make them a First Amendment friendly, we'll give them pink shirts and no batons and no vests and no guns, and we'll give them breath mints. You remember that? Remember the breath mints?
Those were really effective.
Remember that? You were gonna give someone a breath mint and they were gonna calm down and they wouldn't resist arrest. Remember that? That was 10 years ago, by the way. Here we are. So the same way they're saying that, it's also really the ultimate goal of defunding and abolishing the police. We played this last episode, but I think, it really ties in again. This is Mondani after he visited a man who charged police officers with a knife, and the police officers shot him. He visited the family and he sent his condolences, and he was so worried how this should never happen. So police officers respond to a job of an emotionally disturbed person. They attempt to de-escalate numerous times. They cannot stop the mail. Taser fails as usual. They left with no choice but to use their firearms as the male tries to stab them with a large kitchen knife. So here he's pushed by Marcia Kramer she asks him the most basic question about how his Department of Community Safety is going to work. So his Department of Community Safety, he's saying he needs $1.9 billion for it. I'm going to say he needs probably closer to $10 to $15 billion for it, because it doesn't make any sense of how they'll operate with that little budget, with a little staff. They're going to need a whole ecosystem very similar to the NYPD to do that. But he can't even articulate in the lowest form how that's going to work. So that bill was introduced in city council last go around in 2025. It obviously dies in legislation as 2026 comes out. Now, there hasn't been a bill put up yet in 2026 for the creation of Department of Community Safety. Now, the mayor technically doesn't need a bill to start the Department of Community Safety. But how does he get the funding? He has to either find the funding, or it has to be worked into next year's budget. It's obviously not in this year's budget, right? They passed the budget a while back when the moron Brennan was in charge of the finance chair. And, we have a $12 billion deficit that Frank Carone is sitting there trying to tell you that it's not true, when we literally showed you the evidence that the minute Eric Adams walked into office, he knew there was going to be a $10 billion deficit. So Frank, I don't know what you're trying to sell, but it's not going to work here. Maybe some people believe you, but the truth will get in the way of what you're pushing. So he needs $1.9 billion, supposedly needs $1.9 billion to start this Department of Community Safety. Where's he getting the money from? What year in his administration is this Department of Community Safety going to come in? And, you've had all these police executives come out and say what a great idea it is and how they love it. I love it. I think this is where we need to go. I actually had these concerns a few years ago, and I thought I actually said something like this years ago. It's like, yeah, okay, sure you didn't. Sure you didn't. When was that? What month was that? February you did that? Oh, okay.
I remember I got on my knees too.
I have a great idea for this. Just hire me, please, 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 Mondani, please. I'll do it. I'll say anything you want. I'll do. I will be Brian O'Hara if you need me to. I will do. You could drag me around the yard. I'll hold your pocket, Daddy. So where's he getting the money from? If it's not budgeted, I don't know. How do you think your overtime's going to hold up in the NYPD? How do you think your overtime's going to hold up in the FDNY? Where do you think these vital services for your kids are going to go? Where do you think that money's going to go? He's going to have to find the money from somewhere. And if you're listening to them, they're telling you all the places that they're going to take the money from. You're just not listening loud enough. You're just not hearing it. The unions hear it, but, they don't care because, like we said, they live out in Long Island anyway, and they could care less. And they'll move to Florida once it's all said and done after they walk away with all their graft and their spoils from hoarding like the little rats that they are. And but here he is. Now he's going to do all this to put this Department of Community Safety together. And the basis of the Department of Community Safety was that the NYPD was no longer going to respond to people during emotionally disturbed incidents, and it was going to prevent incidents like this from happening. So here's Marcia Kramer, and she asked him the basic question. What's going to happen? How is it going to work in these situations? How is the Department of Community Safety going to be deployed? And how is the situation going to be handled if it turns violent like this one did? And listen to what Mondani has to say.
Can I get a clarification about something, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. So let's make it really quick and then we can talk about it.
I really need to have a clarification
Please.
about this. I know that you talk about the fact that the police can respond in these instances if there's a weapon. But in this case, there wasn't a knowledge that there would be a weapon. There was, the charges were that he was breaking glass. And at the last minute when the cops came in, he pulled a knife out in the kitchen. So how do you determine when the police can arrive if the initial call doesn't say he's got a gun, he's got a knife? What do you do? And then if it turns violent, if a person's there without the ability to stop him, what happens?
So I think there's a few things to say here. One is a lot of this is exactly the focus of the conversations that we're having internally in developing out this Department of Community Safety. Additionally, I want to make clear that a person experiencing a mental health episode does not always have to be served first or exclusively by a police officer. It is important for us to have all of the options available, and that's exactly what we're looking at.
So he can't even answer the question. He goes totally away from it. And just so you know, I'm being told that the mayor needs a law to put this Department of Community Safety in. He could create a mayoral agency without it. So maybe that, since they haven't put a law, maybe that'll be the first thing they do. But listen to what he said there. He can't even explain it. $1.9 billion in the middle of a $12 billion budget deficit. I have no idea how it's going to work is basically what he just said here. But let's do it anyway.
Yeah. Just to quickly go back on about the pension fund again. Something to keep in mind here, right? That I remember when this first happened, I thought to myself, that's the stupidest thing we could have done. I mean, if we actually had much invested in Russian securities, I thought it was the stupidest thing. The reason why is because even back then, Trump talked about weakening the dollar. And just to run over this quickly, Trump wants to bring back businesses into America, production into America. And the only way to make production competitive globally is if you devalue the dollar. Therefore, our costs, that the products produced here would be price competitive with products produced in cheaper locations like China, right? So I thought that was stupid because if the plan is to devalue the dollar, then your assets denominated in rubles would be worth a lot more money when converted back to the US dollar later on. And sure enough, if you do a quick surface level, search, you'd see that had you had 1,000 invested into 2022, that 1,000 would now be worth a little more than 10% more if you converted it back to US dollars right now. Okay. So the point is that the point is that ideology, when your controller shouldn't be investing your money based on ideology. You should be investing your money based on what's going to bring back a adequate return of investment. Okay. So this is why I thought it was a stupid idea for them to do that. Okay. Now, to let me get this off the screen. Now, what Mamdani doesn't have a plan. They don't have a plan for how they're going to close these budget gaps. Okay, they don't. And the plan, if they had an actual plan, they'd be talking about things that like business, like bringing back businesses, making life pleasant in New York City, so that people do not want to go to a better location, do not want to take their tax money to a better location. Okay, and businesses on Wall Street do not want to flee to Dallas or to South Florida. They don't have a plan. And this is one of the biggest things that worries me about the future of New York, is because these guys still think New York City is the New York City of 20 years ago, when everybody was, everybody wanted to come here. Things change, and you have to always have upkeep, and you have to always be mindful of where things are going in your city, because every city, things change over time, and the cities that were once global hubs for trade and finance and all of that changes over time, and you don't want New York City to change because you're not doing upkeep. And we're at such a point where I think everything is coming to a head, and they don't seem to have a plan. And Mamdani, we already talked about, doesn't have this might actually be his first real job, So the guy running the city now and has to quickly think of a plan, because all that stuff, the fire is which was a couple doors down, is now approaching the lawn. He has to quickly think of a plan, and this is his first job, and he's inexperienced, and I just don't know what they're going to do to close these gaps, because again, it's $2 billion now and projected 12 million next year, and like I said before, it might actually be much larger than that.
Oh, that's a great point, Marlon. No doubt about it, hands down. And I think it's important to note also is that you're mentioning other cities, right? And in most other cities, that there's kind of a one-dimensional economic industry, right? If you look at cities like Pittsburgh, right, built on steel. You look at cities like even a Midwestern town like Cincinnati, not as big as Pittsburgh, but also another steel town. And you look at Detroit, right? It was big on the car industry. So a lot of these cities had a specific industry, and if that industry fell, well, we saw those cities get decimated, and that's what happened, right? But New York City, I think, is a complete different animal, because New York City is an everything city, right? Every industry in New York City can thrive. It may not be the same forte as some of these other cities, but every industry can survive in the economic center of the world in New York City, which is why it's so important we have a finger on it. Now, when it comes to Zohran Mamdani and this entire plan with the Department of Community Safety, I think it's pure bullshit. I don't think they're ever actually going to be able to go through with it. And the reality is, because there is no plan. That's why he couldn't even respond to it. There is no plan. I think eventually what they'll do is they'll take this $1 billion and put it in other resources and other avenues, because this whole idea of a social worker department just doesn't work, right? What Zohran Mamdani was trying to sell the public is that the 911 dispatchers would kind of cherry pick and choose who would respond to what. And we know the reality in policing is that there's no nice labels for a 911 call. You can't say, well, this 911 call goes into this bucket and this 911 call goes to that bucket. The 911 calls are just a complete mystery. This idea that they can be labeled and we know what kind of response is necessary is absolutely ridiculous, right? The police department is evolving in real time, right? Which is important. The NYPD response to a call, right? I mean, as we learned at young cops, even when you have a crime scene, when you set up a crime scene, It's large. It's a big scene. But as we start to learn and gather more information and drill down on what's happening, those crime scenes get smaller and smaller to scale. And I believe it's the same thing. When the NYPD responds to any call, it's a mystery. It's large in scale, and we scale it down to figure out, oh, okay, this is a emotionally disturbed person that we have to handle. We scale it down. This is domestic violence. But this idea that 911 will label out which bucket this, okay, this one goes to the emotionally disturbed person, unarmed. We send the social workers. Oh, this one's for the cops. This one's for this unit. Doesn't work. It falls flat in its face, and you can see. And he was squirming in that question because there was never a plan. Everything in this administration is just a complete lie. And I believe there was never a plan, and I don't believe this is ever actually going to happen.
I think it's going to happen. I definitely think it's going to happen, and I think it has a lot to do with really getting rid of the New York City Police Department, at least downsizing it significantly. I mean, and the thing is, like, now that Mondani's here, I'm glad, because we could have conversations with, it's like, oh, you're just mad because there's a black man in office. It's like, no, now I'm getting you're just mad because it's a Muslim in office. But whatever, I could care less. But we're able to have these conversations more because this has been the plan. This has always been the plan. So I have this photo up. This is the Critical Response Command, and I put this out in, I don't even know when this was. This was, let's see. This was September 19th of 2023, right? So I put this photo out, and what I wrote was, I said, the NYPD's Critical Response Command, also known as the CRC, is one of New York City's first lines of defense against terror-related attack. Here you see them standing in Times Square, right, where you'll often see them. And I said, according to sources, they are being told they will be downsized by as much as 75%. So that is Eric Adams' NYPD, right? That was in 2023. That was right prior to October 7th, right? And so we put that out. I think we also put out a email from the chief of their chief, who was also saying they were going to be downsized by 75%. I don't know if I put the email out, but I had the email. And so this has been like this same talk about demilitarization, the same talk about SRG, the CRC. This was already in the works from the minute Eric Adams got in office. The only thing that stalled it was October 7th. If it wasn't for October 7th, it wouldn't have stalled. And the only reason October 7th stalled it is because the Jewish community in New York has a large say over what's going to happen in New York. Right. And that was the only reason the CRC wasn't completely emasculated. They would have pulled them out and SRG would have already been done. And I already think that, 100%. Like, I think the CRC was in the works. I mean, Eric Adams labeled it out, not only during his administration, but he ran on it. He basically ran on it, and Mondani doubled down on it. And that was it. So, to play this, but this was a tweet I pulled out in, this is September 4th of 2023, right? You watch a feckless two police officers, they can't arrest one guy. The girls basically got to make out with him for him to get put in handcuffs at an event, but that's besides the point.
I remember that one.
Here's what Eric Adams was saying. This is Eric Adams in 2021, prior to him becoming the mayor. As he's running, this is actually even prior to him winning the election. But this is the height of election season, right? He says in 21, April 29th, 2021. This is what he says. We must do more to address the deep disparities still baked into policing. Taking steps such as diversifying every department so they look like more communities they serve, and deploying mental health professionals instead of the police. 4/29/21. That's Eric Adams. So what my point in showing this is that like, this has been a decade in the making. For everyone that wants to go back and save Eric Adams' first horrendous term, you can't. For anyone that wants to go back to the de Blasio and the damage he did and try to throw shade on it and show that he didn't and he made New York City safer, you can't, because this is the same language. Mondani is de Blasio. Mondani is Eric Adams. Cuomo is Mondani. They're all same. This is where it's headed, people. And your unions know it. I don't know if the police leadership knows it. I don't know if these executives, these active and retired executives, I don't know if they're intelligent enough to know it, but I know that they're willing to be used enough to bring this into fruition. I 100% think you are going to see a Department of Community Safety, and I think you're going to see it in Mondani's first term. I think you may even see it as early as his second year. I do. Whether it starts off as a mayoral office, however it starts off, we've been headed this way for a very long time, over a decade, and it's going to come to fruition at some point. It's the same thing with what you're hearing. Showed you the Tiffany Caban saying that she doesn't believe desk appearance tickets should happen in precincts. She doesn't want the ability for you to detain someone, to run fingerprints on them, to bring them back, to ensure they're not wanted for murder, maybe possibly do a short-term investigation and ascertain if they were the perpetrator for multiple crime patterns or some other crime. They don't want any of that. She wants you to release them right on the scene, hand them a ticket. And that is going to come to fruition too. Do I think it's going to come in tomorrow? No. But in 2 years from now, you could go back to this podcast. You could go back to that thing, and we're going to say, this is where it started. This is where it started. And you see how long this Department of Community Safety has really been being thrown in all of our ears. And I've heard numerous police commissioners, numerous police executives, numerous retired guys push the same bullshit that Eric Adams was pushing there. We want mental health professionals responding to emotionally disturbed calls instead of police. I've heard that for over a decade. I've heard everybody say it.
John, I just want to clarify that I agree with you, but I do believe that it's impossible for them to actually implement the Department of Community Safety, which I believe why it's going to be a modified version. What I'm trying to say is I believe what they sold in this whole entire campaign is never come to fruition. I think it's going to be a modified version, and I still think that the NYPD, even though they don't want it, will be the hierarchy at this point, because it's just impossible. It's impossible to have a community safety team respond. I mean, every time they come out with these failures, something happens immediately. It's like the sign right away. When Eric Adams decided to have solo post, right away a cop literally almost lost their life, was in a battle. I think this is the same thing. This whole idea that was sold to people want to romanticize and fantasize with the idea of having a community safety team as the apparatus instead of the police department being the hierarchy. And the reality is it just doesn't work, and everyone knows it, which is why I believe he was also stuck in that question, because the reality, everyone knows it's virtually impossible. And as they say in the movie First Blood, General Trotman says to Brian Denny, he was playing the sheriff at the time, you better get a lot of body bags. And if they actually have a Department of Community Safety team, you better get a lot of body bags. This is death by destruction.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. Will it actually happen? I don't have an answer myself, because I've dared them online to do it because I see a potential failure. Yeah, I actually dare him, because a failure of the Department of Community Safety would mean Mondani's a one-term mayor. All you need is the first civilian to get killed there, or to get seriously injured, and then that's it for him, So I don't know if he actually has the balls to go through with it, or if they're gonna just keep, kicking the can down the road while gaslighting his base that it's actually gonna happen. I don't know. Logistically, I don't think it could actually happen. But again,
well, which way are you leaning though? Do you?
I honestly don't know, Eric, because I think about this a lot, because they need to do something with the budget. And we all know they want to downsize the police, replace you with robots and drones. The problem is that there are logistical problems with the energy and the infrastructure for the robots and drones. And there are logistical issues with just having a drone fly by your house and respond to a job. they're in such a place where they've boxed themselves in, you know, and I don't see how they're gonna get out of it. So I really don't have an answer for whether they can make this thing happen. But John is absolutely right that they've been planning this for a long time. You know, look at all the look at all the 3-card Mamdani, right? All of them, and the 4-card Mamdani, if you really consider Jim Walden, because like we said before, Jim Walden is just an elitist, just like all of them. And
hey, Jim, where you been, Jim?
Yeah, we've showed you all the connections he
That's
has
hilarious.
to the same people, the same elitists.
I should have boxed him that night.
That's so.
Huh?
I should have boxed him that night.
Jim was like, that's so funny. Jim was like, you ever see the show Curb Your Enthusiasm where he talks about the kamikazes? He's like, oh yeah, it's so-and-so's fault. He's like, yeah, nah, that was Jim Walden. Yeah, full of shit.
Clean up corruption.
Yeah, and he had his whole Department of Public Safety, which isn't that far off from what Mamdani had and what Eric Adams wanted, and you know.
Yep.
So it's all the same people. It's all the same. They've been given the same talking points and instructions. Yeah. And again, those instructions come from the money men, Wall Street, and the think tanks and the NGOs and the academics. So this plan was in the works for a while. But again, I just don't know how they're gonna get out of the problems they've boxed themselves into right now.
Danny nails Jim. Jim, Andy, Cuomo, Stooge, Walden.
Yeah. That's hilarious. So if you were a bet man, Ballin, would you say it's going to happen? And John, I know your answer. You say it's going to happen. I say it's impossible to happen. Maybe a modified version, but not the way they sold it. I just don't think.
I'm going to say, even with what I said, I'm going to say the odds are likely that Mamdani doesn't go through with it. Because again, he's a young politician and he doesn't have the balls to bet his future career, which we all know that they're propping him up.
How much you guys want to bet? I'm willing to bet.
I'll bet you the beard, bro. Let's do it. I'll bet you the beard.
A beard? A beard? I don't care. I was thinking about shaving my beard. It's not really.
I noticed he's a little trimmed down. What happened, man?
Well, I messed up with my razor this morning. I'm good for messing my beard up.
All right, John, if we're right, you have to grow hair.
I like get the salesman. I can only grow on the sides. Like I can only get here. Do I have to wear a toupee?
$100. Let's do it.
Do I have to wear a toupee on the top?
Oh yeah.
Do I have to glue it?
You can do it like Demilitarize, man.
Yeah, I'll do that. There's a couple of dudes that just need to rip that rug off, bro. Just let it go. You're bald. You know.
Yeah, the thing is, even if he lets it happen, right? Even if he lets it happen, they're gonna put cops to respond with the Department of Community Safety anyway.
Oh, and I told you, they'd be down a block.
Yeah, and then you don't have enough cops to do that and be on patrol too. You don't have enough cops to have 2 cops with these guys for like an hour or 2 or however long, talking, trying to de-escalate and reason with these EDPs and get them to want to go to the hospital or whatnot.
I think they know it's impossible. Go ahead, John.
So look, one, I would have lost my poly market bet, and so would you guys about Jessica Tisch, Lieutenant Governor, right? Because we lost that. Hochul announced Adrienne Adams, former New York City Council Speaker, as her running mate, right? So we lost that bet. Here's my thing. Like I agree with you to a point. One, I think 100%. You don't like. I think you guys are underestimating the ability for New York City politicians and New York State politicians to waste money on things that they'll never use. I think you think they care about the money too much. They care about the budget deficit. So I think 100% this Department of Community Safety is going to come into fruition. Now, if you want to say, are they going to be the #1 response for emotionally disturbed people? Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think like to pull the trigger on to have that happen. No, I don't think right away you're going to see that happen where it's like, oh, those 911 calls are going to get funneled to the Department of Community Safety. If you look at, and the reason I'm saying that is if you look at the other thing we spoke about over the summer, where that keeps happening quarterly in New York City, where we're spending $192 million on these violence intervention programs, and where we do this experiment where in Brownsville, where the 911 calls get funneled to violence interventors for a few hours in the daytime, and the cops aren't allowed in the zone. Like, huge waste. There's $192 million basically thrown in the garbage, right? And so what Mondani's going to do is take 1.9 billion, probably more than that, and throw that in the garbage and create this Department of Community Safety. And there's going to be a lot of people getting jobs, and there's going to be a lot of people on the city dole, right? There's going to be a lot of people getting these jobs, and they're going to do absolutely nothing. It's going to be an absolutely feckless, huge waste of money. If I'm a betting man, I know I'm coming off a loss. I know I'm coming off a loss to Poly Market. I'm doubling down. I'm betting the Department of Community Safety comes in, and not only does it come in, and it doesn't respond right away to these things, even though the infrastructure is there for them, because hey, the radios are all encrypted now. You can't hear what's going on the calls.
That's true.
So you're not going to hear the screams for help from the help me. So you can't hear the screams for help, right? So all that's encrypted. But I think that what'll happen is it'll come in and it'll be, again, a slow trickle effect. So what's going to happen is they're going to come in, crime's going to continue to be down, and the Department of Community Safety is going to get all of these nice statistics ran for them from feckless, ballless people that are going to say, and police executives that are going to say, it's been a huge success and crime is down and we've had so much better outcome at these emotionally disturbed. And they're going to point to all these arbitrary and like time periods on how it's improved the response for. So I 100% think you are going to see the Department of Community Safety. I'm going to wear the hat. I'm going to buy the swag. I'm all in. Department of Community Safety, baby. I say by 2027, it's here.
I know what you're saying. I say there's a modified version. And if they do it, I say that there's going to be, every time a social worker responds, there's going to be a cop around the corner. I said this on prior episodes. There's going to be two cops around the corner just waiting. And they're really attached to that job. But they're just waiting for the social workers to let them know, okay, yeah, we need you, we don't need you. But for them to just operate without the police department as a sole entity, I don't see it happening. I think it's virtually impossible. I think everybody knows. I know these politicians, they're insane, and I think this is where Mullen, you nailed it. He wants a second term. And if he has a death on his hands, there's no second term. There's no it's done.
Oh, you guys are crazy. If he doesn't appease his base, there's no second term deaths.
That's true too.
Write those off, dude. Come on. There's people die. There was 13. I'm sorry. I think they accounted for 13 people that are dead in New York City streets, freezing to death. You think that's going to hurt him from getting a second term? And I heard it's a lot more, by the way. I heard it's like closer to 21 people that are dead on New York City streets, freezing to death. I don't think it affects them at all.
No, so they really don't care about people. That's the sad part. It really is sad. But it's insane. I just think it's impossible. And you're right. And shame on these failed managers of the NYPD, these leaders, and those that are out there right now who are trying to vie for a job, who know damn well that this is just completely insane, but they keep pushing it also. Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. And I can see it right now. They'll have a ComStat award for a social worker, a social worker hero. I can see it right now. And, it's a great job, how effective it's going to be and the amount of de-escalation it's provided. Just wait. It's coming. It's coming. Pick a chief right now who's going to take a knee. They're all doing it right now. What did you say, John? They're taking a knee while they're standing up? They sure are.
Yeah. I'm going to have to push back on John saying that we were wrong about, now look, we were wrong, but we were 100% on the right track,
That's true.
Because
yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no, we I mean, look, anyone that thinks that Jessica Tisch wasn't in the running, you're smoking crack. Like whether she decided to or not, like, but it was good. We knew that it was someone that they weren't saying, right? We knew it was someone else. We're like, no, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's not any of the people that they're naming. This is all a charade. But I mean, end of the day, you lose on Polymarket. You lose the bet.
Yeah, and the thing is, we were also right about the election. I mean, again, we were on the right track about the election, because what did we say? We also said that there would be a lot of electioneering for Eric Adams. And what happened? What happened in August? I believe August was when Martin was indicted. You know, and I think that torpedoed his shot. Okay, and I think at that point the elitists shifted to Cuomo, and then what did we see happen in that election? We saw a massive amount of electioneering for Andrew Cuomo. Okay, we saw the shenanigans that we told you were coming for the election, but they just came for Andrew Cuomo. You know, and also they also came from Mamdani, because we told you how by doing what they were doing, they were also energizing the leftist base and kind of creating a straw man, which you know, they game the system. So either one wins, they win, and not and basically took any shot of Curtis Sliwa winning away. So again, we were on the right track here, and we, you know, no, we're not psychics, so we kind of lost the bet, but I think 100% we were on the right track. And I'm just gonna say that keep in mind, the budget of the NYPD is upwards of $12 billion a year. And what have we talked about that the city has a problem with right now? Well, they have budget deficits, massive budget deficits, which might be even bigger in the coming years. So you see where they're targeting, why they're targeting the NYPD here, and why they love nothing better than to put $2 an hour civilians who are untrained in the role of in the role that is traditionally occupied by the police department. But also there are other agencies that kind of their budgets are kind of massive as well, including the DOE. But they love going after the police department because they've demonized the police department for so long, and they've created an enemy that's like you know, it's easier for them to target this enemy than it is for them to target the waste and fraud in the Department of Education. Okay, but you know, I still can't say that Mamdani is going to do this, and the reason why is because you have incidents like what happened in Malba, Queens, and you see how angry that community was. Now, can you imagine the Department of Community Safety responding to that community? I want to know, with incidents like this happening, how exactly he's going to convince these communities, and my community too, because I live in a middle class Black neighborhood of people who you know, made things, you know, they made something out of themselves in the early 80s. We're talking older folks in the 60s and 70s, and then they moved out to this part of Queens at that point. And I'm telling you, if they want to do Department of Community Safety over here, even though people over here are Democrats, I guarantee you they're going to be up in arms about that. So I want to know how they would convince these communities to be okay with these people responding to police matters.
Well, that's a good point. I think this actually goes against what society norms, right? We know that policing has been going on all these years. I mean, John, you've been really delved into studies and looking in the 1800s. Police was necessary then, and it's even far more necessary now as we have more technology, we evolve. That's why I say they want the cops out there in 2026 policing with same tools they had in 1995, and these social workers don't have any tools. Now, someone said it here. I lost the comment, but someone said it here that they'd rather invest in this program knowing it's not going anywhere and waste the money than actually give the money to the NYPD. So yeah, it's just everything, right? That part is true. They weaponize all these investments and they take everything away from the NYPD. Why? I always say this is the most tangible form of government, the NYPD, the boots on the ground. So how do you attack government? You attack the NYPD, and it's an easy enemy. It's, if you go after more, like you said, Department of Education, I think Department of Education actually has far more worse spending problems than the NYPD, but they don't go after it because it's a sensitive subject. So I agree with you. You look at the spending and the waste
block too.
Exactly. If you look at the spending and the waste in Department of Education, it makes the NYPD look like it's a fiduciary powerhouse. So, I mean, John, it's a disaster.
Look, it's like everything else, right? They beat the shit out of the NYPD. They pull funding from the NYPD. They reduce the headcount of the NYPD. They emasculate the NYPD. They handcuff them. They criticize them to no end. But at the end of the day, even with that, they're the most relied upon agency in the city, and they'll remain the most relied upon agency in the city. It's just the problem is you're not having experience. They're not looking like they used to. It's just not. Look, the NYPD is a great job for people like Juju, right? Like, he sits in his office, he does absolutely nothing. He goes to, he pretends like he's injured half his career. He's then he's going out and teaching, and then he could tell everybody he's a cop when he never was one. You know what I mean? Like, it's great for that. But for the average rank and file person, the person who has no political connections, the person who doesn't game the system, is not a genius, right? And doesn't game the system and know every little thing they're entitled to, the person that actually goes to work every day and wants to do the right thing, those people, the job gets much harder. The term, we're going to do more with less. And we've been doing that for the last 15 years. I mean, now we're going to do everything with nothing. And that's what's happening, So, the whole thing, we're going to demilitarize them. We're going to get rid of the SRG. We're going to bring in this Department of Community Safety. All of that stuff's going to happen. We're going to make people no longer be brought back to the precinct for desk appearance tickets. We're going to, and so, someone said on here that they're an active lieutenant, 32 years. No one gets issued desk appearance tickets for firearms. Yeah, I mean, not on the regular, but I've seen numerous people get issued desk appearance tickets for carrying a firearm recently in the last 3 years, especially on the Eric Adams, depending upon who you know. So is that traditional? So I didn't mean to say it like that, but desk appearance tickets will become a summons out in the street. Like, all of this going to happen, and all of that's going to happen, and Department of Community Safety is going to get touted for all the drops in crime and the drops in deaths and all of these fudged up, misrepresented numbers. But at the end of the day, when the shit hits the fan, and it's always going to, every single day, every hour of the day, shit's going to hit the fan in New York City, you're going to rely on the New York City Police Department. It just is what it is. The two agencies they rely upon the most are the New York City Police Department and the FDNY. And they're the two that are most heavily under attack. And they'll remain under attack. For whatever reason it is, they hate competence. And I just don't see how you're going to actually be able to keep anybody happy. Republican, Democrat, Socialist, when the city turns into a complete shithole, your garbage isn't getting picked up. You have these paid agitators and useful idiots taking over college campuses or keeping you from going to work, taking over the trains or mass transit. I don't see how anyone's going to be happy with it. And even the bought and paid for legacy media will have no choice but to continue to report on it, because what'll happen, what's been happening, you'll see that their numbers will drop significantly, as they have been, and you'll see independent voices get more views, more listens. Their articles get more reads than what the legacy media, who's telling you, no, everything's good, a history's being made, and you're like, wait, that doesn't sound right. Doesn't seem like it. Seems like 1970 all over again to me. So yeah, I think we're just headed for some bad times, So anything else on this subject before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the 1970s, because in the something I was thinking is that I also said it a while ago too, that I think at some point the city may be under some sort of receivership, if not the state, then the feds, because again, there's no way of accomplishing all they want to do logistically. It just, I don't see it happening. And it may work. A Department of Community Safety may be okay with the community in places like Brownsville, where they've been indoctrinated by for decades with progressivism, and they have a lot of broken families there, and but it's not going to work in other neighborhoods like as I mentioned, Malba. And again, that brings us to a wall, and I think, again, the only way of getting out of that wall is that receivership. And keep in mind, now in the 1970s, the state created the Municipal Assistance Corporation and the Emergency Financial Control Board, which took management over the city's finances. And I see that as possibly the only way of getting out of this, where the state or somebody else actually takes control of the city, because the city just has boxed themselves in, and they don't have the tools to make the necessary changes and not anger communities in the city.
I mean, it's a great point. You talk about the 70s. 70s probably might have been the lowest point in 20th century for New York City, right? It was decimated. Real estate market was terrible. I mean, look at the Bronx. There were some streets that weren't even recognizable, right? Former President Jimmy Carter went to a street in the Bronx. They couldn't even find the actual street because it was just so burned down and decimated. Real estate was a disaster. It was a low point of poverty in New York City, and we've come back from that. So could we come back to that? Yeah, we could come full circle, sure. And I mean, listen, we're in a $12 billion deficit in New York City, so anything could happen. But again, as I said, that's what makes us different, though, from other cities where we don't have just we're not one-dimensional when it comes to industry, like a steel town like Pittsburgh or Detroit with the car industry. We have every economic wheel in New York City, so it's far different. And a housing market could bounce around at any time, back and forth.
Yeah, and so the last thing for today, NYPD supervisor was indicted from out of the New York Southern District of New York, and again, it just shows how corruption still happens in the New York City Police Department, but only some of it actually gets prosecuted, I guess. Is that what we hear? So United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, acting special agent in charge of the New York Field Office, Homeland Security, HSI, Mike Alfonso, and assistant director in charge of New York Field Office, Bureau of Investigations, James C. Barnacle Jr., announced that Pamela Dillard, a former supervisor in the New York City Police Department, pled guilty to participating in a conspiracy to solicit and accept bribes. Dillard admitted to providing personally identifiable information of automobile accidents contained in a non-public NYPD database to an admitted co-conspirator who owned and operated a call center that referred accident victims to lawyers and doctors in exchange for bribes, money, and other things of value. Dillard pled guilty today before United States District Judge John G. Cotil and is scheduled to be sentenced on July 1st, 2026. So look, I don't feel bad at all about this. I think, it's something that needs to happen, but we had basically a prostitution ring that was never looked at. We've had an extortion ring, a protection extortion racket that was never looked at. We've had sales of promotions, which was never looked at. Also a thing in the 1870s, by the way. We brought that back under the Eric Adams administration, selling promotions. All of this stuff was ripe and happening under the Eric Adams administration. And yeah, it's like, this person was giving information that they shouldn't. And we're gonna go after them, not the real corruption. Like, this is corruption, and rightfully so. She was investigated and arrested, and I'm not saying that at all, but it just shows like they went after low hanging fruit and all of the real thick, deep-seated corruption. And this supervisor was a civilian, right, who had access to a department database. It wasn't an actual law enforcement officer. All of that corruption, all of that graft that happened under the Eric Adams administration, it went nowhere. And it's disgusting. It's honestly, it again shows how politicized law enforcement is, and politicized investigations, and politicized accountability. Zero accountability, in my opinion. Like that makes me more mad than being like, oh, good job.
Yeah. And zero accountability in New York and blue cities and blue states. But, you know, you go to a red state and, you know, things are humming along. And again, we talked about their growth and businesses and all that and people moving there. So, you know, my biggest fear is that America is becoming balkanized. And I see it more and more every day, you know, where things that are happening in blue cities and states is completely different from what's happening in red cities and, you know, red states, red areas, you know. And this just tells you that, you know, over here the rules don't really matter, you know. The rules won't apply. But if you go to the other places, the rules do. And the people who work in those blue areas, who make the laws that are affected in the blue areas, they don't care because, you know, they're in a red state, you know, they're in a red area, you know, and they're unaffected by the poor policy, the corruption, and the malfeasance. And I see more and more every day that this is where the country is headed to right now.
I just want to say that, you know, I think the NYPD had their priorities right. Forget about all these investigations. Go after the Finance Unfiltered. Find out the cops that are talking to the Finance Unfiltered because they're talking bad about the Chiefs. Don't do that. That's not good. Don't do that. Anyway, almost 2 hours and 30 minutes into it. Like, share, and subscribe. Friday Roundtable, Finance Unfiltered. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Friends and listeners, we appreciate it. We really, please like, share, and subscribe. We're growing. We're over 100,000. Let's keep going. Let's hit that million together. We appreciate it. Let's keep rocking. Coffee and donuts. What do we got?
Yeah. And just for those of you that listen later on, make sure you hit that hype button too, please. Every video I watch now, I hit the hype button. So even if I don't like your video, I still hit it. I still hit the like and I hype it. Hype it up, you know. So help us push us up in the algorithm. We appreciate it. All right, let's go. Stephen Dess. What does he say? Does the union have any say on minimum manning for each tour? Absolutely. I mean, the union's basic function and basic job is to ensure health, safety, and wellness for their members. Minimum manning goes not only to your quality of life during your work tour, ensuring that you're able to get a meal, ensuring that the department meets its contractual obligations, but also your safety. And I think we could all reasonably say when you're turning out 3 cars, I don't care what precinct you're in New York City, your life's in danger. You're being put in an unnecessary danger, right? Especially when 1 PP is packed. The halls in 1 PP is packed. There's a lot of coffee getters. There's a lot of butt sniffers. There's a lot of people that have not done this job. They could get out there, strap that uniform on, get out there and answer some jobs too. I mean, that is the core function of policing. And, you know, I hear a lot that a lot of the precincts are overstacked with specialty units, like special operations, and that it's no longer like when I was in special operations, we would help out. Like we, you know, if let's just say we had a conditions team and there was disorderly youths, you'd help out. If the radio was busy and there were 1011s coming over, which is alarms, you would help out. You'd pick those up, right? And like, you know, crime would pick up things that they could watch and observe on, right? Maybe even sometimes crime would pick up the disorderly youth. Like, hey, we'll go over there, we'll look at it, we'll let you know, we'll get back to you, you know, or you know, whatever it is. But like 911 was always the priority. And for some reason, it seems like 911 is no longer priority. And I think that was a big reason why they really encrypted the radios, so people can't see how long it's taking for the NYPD to respond to 911 and 311 calls. And yeah, absolutely, the union should be all over this, and they haven't been, and it's been since 2020, man. Where the hell are you guys? I mean, they're non-existent at this point. I mean, but yeah, it should be their core function. Like,
yeah, should be, but it doesn't affect them. So,
not at all. That's what it is.
Sleepy Joe's easy solution, Lieutenant. Social workers will replace all centrals. So I guess he's saying that 911 calls come in for emotionally disturbed people, they'll have a social worker to determine whether or not you're going to get a mental health professional or a police officer response.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that sounds nice in theory. It sounds about as nice as Montani's Department of Community Safety until it's time to answer a single question about it.
Little do these people know that I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but probably 3/4 of the time, John and Marlon, you know it, what you get told by the by Central, the dispatcher, is far different when you get there. When you get to a call, like, what? It's not even close. It's a mystery. That's why I call every call is a mystery.
Absolutely.
You know what? Something I always thought of. Well, you know, we talked about it prior, but I honestly think Central should be telling us there should be more information given over the radio, especially if there's I don't know if they do it now, but certainly when I was there, there should be more given about the, you know, like an EDP history at a certain location, you know, not just like if it's a chronic, you know, but like, you know, just give us more about that location. And that's something that they certainly didn't do when I was on patrol. I don't know if they do it now, but and I don't know if now the prevalence of the cell phones and the DOS and all these newer systems gives the responding cops more information. But I think that really should be worked on.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, you know, that information is pooled. I think they should be reading out. The information's there, put it that way. There's more information there than when we were cops, you know.
Yeah.
So, all right, the Smith. Here we go. Levon Holly is an embarrassment. Tish paraded a toxic, polarizing NYPD figure on stage and tried to legitimize him. Glad Department of Manhattan South is nowhere near this piece of shit. Godspeed to narco. Demilitarize equals more femboy cops. You know, couldn't agree with you more. Someone sent us a video of Levon Holly in Jersey in like 2008 or 2009 doing like a shirtless contest. Pretty funny. But, you know, I was like, all right, he can't be that bad. If he was hanging out down the Jersey Shore, you know, he can't be that bad, you know. But, you know, I guess sometimes people forget where they came from. And then, you know.
Best legs. I mean, no, it was best chest.
Best chest. And, you know, 17 collars and a chief. So, yeah.
Hey, but at least he won an award, best chest.
Yeah. Did he win? I didn't watch the
No, I don't know. I didn't get to finish.
I didn't watch. I just laughed when I seen it. I was like, I'm not posting this.
After seeing half men, half naked, I had enough. It was enough for me.
Yeah. It was a little.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
I'm not into that. Yeah. You know?
as Juju would say, I spent a lot of time in Thailand. Yeah. I'm good, bro.
Yeah, Juju, we'll send you the video. We're sure you'll watch it a few times.
Yeah. So Samara Cohen and Samantha Guccian are saying that they actually do, to answer my last question. So thank you for the info, and I gotta compliment the job on at least doing that part, you know, and because I remember the days when we were going to a job and we don't have a computer, and we're depending on the radio for everything, you know. So I gotta compliment the job on at least doing that, doing that part to make
who got that contract
a little better.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, same here.
Decrypt the radios. I want to hear it. Yeah. Well, at least let us listen to it the next day. I don't give a shit if it's in real time for me. You know.
I want to hear the social workers respond. Oh my god.
Yeah. I want to hear the operator reading the jobs out.
What did you call it? Fear porn? This is gonna be radio porn. Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
516 Diecast. I think that's Pio Affronte. Present for duty. Thank you all network wide for what you all do. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Hope all is well. Hope everybody's staying warm. It's going to be a cold one. We got Big Hamza. Big Hamza, what's up, brother? The NYPD is so watered down and such a joke that Orange County no longer accepts lateral transfers anymore. The NYPD looks like a motley crew.
Yep.
I think the terminology is emasculated, you know. Yep. It's just what it is. Emasculated, incompetent.
The NYPD was once the go to policing. No more. Now it's the butt end of a joke.
You know what I was thinking about? It's funny. I'm like, all these executives that retired, if you think about it, from like Eric Adams all the way through to now, the only one that has got like a good job, the only one still in law enforcement, Kaz Daughtry.
Go figure.
He's the only one. Like, wouldn't you think that if we were the premier law enforcement agency, that as these executives retire, like they would be looking to get them in federal jobs? There'd be other cities looking to make them chiefs elsewhere. It's like, it's not happening. Why? I wonder. Because you guys all, I think that SRG is mean looking and I'd like to revamp them. I could see this.
They're scary looking.
Yeah.
Can you remove those Halloween costumes, please?
Yeah.
Oh,
so 100% Big Hamza. Agree.
We got any more coffee and donuts? What do we got? Yeah, here we go.
Patrick Donahue. Pat, I missed the comment you said about my shirt. I was trying to find it, but there's too many in that. So he said it was like from somewhere. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I never got to break it up. It's not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is not marred by a ball gag. Eric Dim.
Well said, brother. Patrick Donahue. You know what? Marlon said, what was the word you used again? I forgot. What was the word that he loved?
I don't.
Austerity.
Oh, yeah, austerity.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, Patrick Donahue used the big word, ball gag. That's a big word.
Yeah.
So, 2 words. Ball and gag.
Yeah. It's from, Ron says it's from the Greg Grady Groovy Leisure Wear collection.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Look, this is Costco's finest right here. So I don't know what you people are talking about.
Hey, Kirkland makes good stuff, brother. Kirkland makes good stuff.
This isn't Kirkland. I forgot what the hell it is, but look, nice line, like Sherpa lined interior. You know, it's nice. I got
Costco.
Nin, I got my Waylon Jennings shirt on for you today. All right.
Where is Nin?
I don't know. I think there's a show starting soon that he's
maybe that's what it is.
You know, they do facts, not feelings, you know, like not like this show.
Evidence-based.
Evidence. Yeah, so
racism is evidence. Well, anyway.
All right, people. All right, yeah. Well, look, we'll be back on Monday. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay warm. Don't sleep out on the street in New York City, please. Because
don't be number 14, please.
It's gonna be 2 degrees, which is gonna feel like -10. So not good. It's actually freezing here in North Florida too. So don't sleep. Well, you can sleep outside of Florida. You know, and that's it. Hopefully Super Bowl. You know, I don't know. Who do you think is gonna win? Seattle. You think Seattle? You think the defense?
I got Seattle. Yeah.
I don't know. I got a couple of Drake May cards like signed or whatever, and now so I think I just want them to win. Just like I hope he goes on a run so those cards become valuable.
All right, let's bet the winner. Let's bet the winner for Monday. What do people got? What do friends and listeners got? I Simply East says Patriots. I'm going Seattle all the way on this one.
You know, I think I agree with you. Like I'm gonna do some daily fantasy and DraftKings, and I think I'm gonna target a lot of Seattle over the Patriots.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm going to target Seattle. What about you, Marlon? You been paying attention?
Nah, I actually stopped watching the NFL since the BLM stuff. I want to get back into it, but it's been like a while now, you know. So I don't know. Maybe I'll check it out. You know, I used to be excited for the Super Bowl. I really did, you know. But ever since the BLM crap, I'm like, you know, it just turned me off so much, you know.
I know.
You know what it is? Like, I don't root for any teams though. Like I just play DraftKings, so I do daily fantasy, and I just put like it's like horse racing for me. I just put the guys that I think are going to do better.
That's hilarious.
And like so not last week, 2 weeks ago in the series, I was in the Millionaire Maker in DraftKings, and I was this close to first place. I finished in 23rd. I still made decent money, but like. you know, I wanted that $1 million spot. So so like, that's my only, if it wasn't for that, I would never watch. If it wasn't for that, I could get like a little action on it and like gamble, because, you know, being far from Atlantic City is not good for me. It's not good for me. I need like at least a monthly excursion, play a little Texas Hold'em, pull a couple of slot machines. So like, this is DraftKings has only during football season has alleviated that somewhat.
Do you have Sam Darnold?
Sam Darnold, I'm gonna have. I'm gonna do a couple of lineups. I'm gonna do a couple of different lineups.
Yeah, he showed some real promise, man.
That kid Jackson Smith and Njigba, that kid is really good. That wide receiver.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That kid's really good. He's good. Their running back, I think, is Walker is his last name. He's pretty good. But you know, I like the Patriots too. I like Drake May. I like Stephon Diggs. You know,
It shocked me. I thought the Rams were going all the way initially, but now it's come down to this. I go with Seattle.
Yeah, Lily called me a party pooper in the chat.
Yeah, that's
like
funny. Yeah.
The NFL.
Lily loves you. It's okay. Lily, come on. Lily, who you rooting for? I say Lily's going to the Patriots.
I mean, look, I haven't liked the halftime show in probably a decade. I don't even think I watched.
Oh man, they suck now.
Oh, they're terrible, right?
Yeah. Jesus.
I just have like, they're like, oh, we're gonna have Bad Bunny and he's gonna be wearing a dress. It's like, oh yeah, it's cool. I'm not watching that.
Ever since her booby came out, they haven't been good after that.
Cool.
I think ever since
I'll be talking politics at during your halftime show.
One booby came out and all the halftime shows went down the shitter.
That was a good halftime show.
No, yeah, I disagree. I disagree. The Bruno Mars one was good.
Bruno Mars. You're right. Okay.
Bruno Mars was good. Yeah.
What's that? The Katy Perry was all right, and the Maroon 5 one was okay too.
The Bruno Mars, I'll give it to you.
Bruno Mars was the best one though. Yeah. The last 10 years.
Yeah, Bruno Mars was good. Yeah. But like the Beyonce one, remember that one? That was
garbage.
Come on.
I didn't even watch it. I was like, I'm not watching this shit.
What was the one with Dr. Dre? I was like,
the old guys from 40 years ago and rap like anybody, you know?
Yeah. Guys, come on.
Yeah.
We saw Boys in the Hood. It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Lily. I don't watch the NHL. I'll go to it live though. Hockey is great live. I just can't watch it on TV. You know, it's like baseball. I'll go to a baseball game anytime because it's different than watching it on TV. It's more entertaining there than it is on TV. Yeah.
Oh, my favorite stadium is definitely Camden Yards, hands down.
Yeah,
really?
That's a good spot. Yeah, I like it.
They got that big wall there, right?
Yeah, that's a good spot. And then they got a place over there, something Pickles. It's a pretty cool bar right there.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you walk a block away, beware.
What do you Simply says halftime live, John? What do you guys think? We go live for halftime, or we do a daily fantasy show for the Super Bowl? We pick our favorite players. There's actually, if you guys are into that, check out DFS Army. They're pretty good. I don't agree with them. I don't think I ever agree with them on anything, but like I like to hear their thoughts on the players. They break down like how you should build your lineup.
Yeah.
So if you guys do that, it's pretty good, you know.
Outstanding. So everyone have a good time on Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday. We'll be back Monday. Of course, we'll talk about it. Yeah. As I said, I got Seattle. Everyone have a good time.
Yeah. I'll talk about the movie trailers.
Yeah, we got to watch that movie with Roddy Piper. What's it called again? Living Free or something?
It's They Live.
No, They Live. Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah, I gotta watch it. I never seen it. I gotta watch
that. Roddy Piper and Keith David. There's a 30-minute fight in the movie where Roddy Piper is trying to get Keith David to put on his sunglasses. He's like, put on the sunglasses, and they're really like going at it, like doing pile drivers on the concrete.
Really?
It's a great movie though. Great movie.
Okay. John, we gotta see this movie.
Yeah. I'll stay. I'm down. All right, peoples. Have a great weekend. Have a happy, safe one. Don't drink and drive, please. Don't drive the wrong way on the Titanic or any other street. Don't kill anybody or yourself. We appreciate it. So, everybody, that's it. Find us on Filter, baby. We'll be back at you.
Find us on Filter. Take care.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire, and have a master plan on how to fight crime. But nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?